Sadness was all you could see on the young face of one Naruto Uzumaki. At the age of 10 years old, Naruto has been driven to run from a place he used to call home. For the last 7 years Naruto has been neglected and forgotten by his so-called family. Standing by the gate, Naruto looked back at the manor for what would be the last time for a long while, lost in thought of this past year. The only relief the poor boy got was playing with his childhood friend Rias and Akano. Naruto loved to go over to the Gremory estate and watch anime, and run around the backyard with Rias and Akano. Naruto even made friends with young Rivel Phoenix, with her only being a couple years younger than him. She took an instant liking to Naruto due to his blonde hair and blue eyes. Whenever Rias was busy he would go over and see if Rivel was available. Both parents of Rias and Rivel loved Naruto and he was welcomed over at their houses any time. When the weight of being alone at home became too much, Naruto would go seek comfort from either of the ladies of Gremory and Phoenix, or his friends. Alas, it wasn't enough to keep the would-be heir with this family. They have forgotten too many birthdays, and let Menma his twin brother abuse him too many times. Naruto kept holding out, waiting for his parents to train him in the family magic of sealing chains and lightning. All their attention from day one was on Menma when he was born with a slightly bigger magical core than Naruto. Stripped of his birthright, and cast aside, Minato and Kushina devoted all their time on Menma, preparing him for his upcoming leadership of the Uzumaki family. Naruto didn't think that his parents were doing this on purpose. His family was surprisingly blunt. His parents, not in a vicious way, always told him that because of his brother's above-average core, and Naruto's below-average core, that he would amount to nothing. Naruto could understand wanting what is best for the clan, but the lack of attention, the neglect was what got to him, along with the lack of encouragement. It was decided on that day that Naruto would become so strong that his parents would have to acknowledge him. He would show them that he could become someone. While Naruto was 15 minutes older than his twin Menma, he looked different than Naruto does. Menma lacked the whiskers that Naruto had, and his hair was a pale red, nothing like the vibrant, blood red of his friend Rias. Naruto had a slightly better athletic build than Menma did, while not exactly fat per se, he just had a little extra bone than Naruto did. He thought with his slightly above average core and family techniques he didn't need to train his body. While Naruto was never truly abused by his parents, they never acknowledged him. It was always, Menma already did Menma did it better. Well, of course Menma is ahead and better, he was getting all the attention and training. When the day came to see if the boys were ready for their evil pieces, Naruto had to remind his parents to take him along. While he wasn't the heir to their family, he has a pure blood devil and it was his right to get them. Menma, when he received them, had one of this pawn's turn mutation. For the rest of the day he could not stop gloating. What Naruto's parents and Menma missed was truly a phenomenon, a first in the world of the devils. All of Naruto's pieces turned mutation when he put his magic into them. Ajuka Beelzebub was too busy congratulating Menma to notice as well. If he had been paying attention, then he would have seen what could have possibly been the greatest peerage potential since Searsex. Finally armed with the only thing that Naruto wanted from the castle now, he decided that he would leave to complete his peerage. Naruto would train outside the castle walls and become so powerful that his parents couldn't ignore him. He would create the greatest peerage the devil world had ever seen. Naruto shook his head, dispelling the thoughts of his reverie. Naruto smiled and took his first step outside the castle walls. With the cloak of darkness that the night provided, Naruto vanished into the night. The only sign that he was still alive to the world would be rumors that he and his peerage would create. Time skip 5 years, no offense, but who wants to read about training, right after Issei reincarnated? We find our hero walking down the sidewalk towards the Kuo Academy. Having made a brief stop back home, Naruto was now enrolled in the school two of his friends attend. After 5 years of training, a searching Naruto is ready to make his appearance as a devil. Flashback. Naruto finally made it back home after all these years. He was ready to confront his family. Naruto stepped to the front to their house. The guards stationed there wore a look of shock. The son of Minato and Kushina has finally returned. Naruto didn't even need to stop. Flashing the back of his hand to show the Uzumaki crest, he stepped through the gates and made his way up to the manor. Idly wondering whether this absence was missed or not, Deciding not to dilly-dally, Naruto put both hands on the large wooden doors and shoved them open. Minato and Kushina happened to be visiting with the Lord and Lady of Gremory and Phoenix. Turning their attention to the interruption brought wide eyes from the 6 occupants of the room. "Well, I wasn't expecting to have company when I came back," said Naruto as he surveyed the room. Surprisingly, it was Lady Phoenix and Gremory who reacted first and made a beeline to where he was standing. Throwing their arms around him, bombarding him with questions of "Are you alright?" and "Where were you?" Finally, after getting them to calm down, they made their way over to the others. Naruto, observing that his actual parents had yet to react to his presence other than their wide eyes. "After 5 years of my not being here, and you don't have anything to say to me?" said Naruto. Kushina was the first to react. "Naruto, where were you? After you left without any reason, we couldn't find you. Everyone has been out looking for you." "Oh really, you had everyone out looking for me? How long did it take for you to realize I was gone?" "Oh, and another thing, no reason to leave. I felt like a stranger in my own house. You guys never paid any attention to me, and you did nothing about Menma's abuse towards me. I had plenty reason to leave," said Naruto. "We're sorry that is the impression that we gave you. We never purposefully ignored you. Menma was to be heir to the family and he needed the extra help," said Minato, finally deciding to chime in. "Well, since you want to know where I've been, I was traveling the world looking to complete my peerage, and train because I certainly wasn't getting it here," said Naruto, exasperated. "However, I have not returned home. I merely stopped by to tell you that I am living in Japan now and I would like to go to Kuo Academy so I can be with Rias and Akano," said Naruto before any of them could reply. "That's fine, I can help you with that, Naruto. I will send the paperwork to the student council and get you enrolled," said Lord Gremory before either Minato or Kushina could respond. Both still had a slight dazed look on their faces, not really understanding what is going on. The return of their son put them back a few steps. It's not that they weren't glad to see him, it just that this seemed to be another of Naruto's episodes where he is acting out. "Thank you, Lord Gremory, I would really appreciate that. I will make sure to look out for Rias while I am there," said Naruto, getting up to leave. "Oh, and make sure that you come by the Phoenix Manor sometime soon. Revel was so distraught when you left, it would be nice to see her happy again," said Lady Phoenix, with a sickly sweet smile on her face. Naruto began to sweat under the intense stare. "Sure thing, Lady Phoenix, I would love to see Revel again," Naruto said quickly. If there was one thing that he learned during his time away, way to never invoke the wrath of a woman. Satisfied with his answer, she backed off and bade him goodbye. Naruto sending one last dispassionate glance at his parents before saying his goodbyes to the other and teleported back home. The others idly wondering what surprises Naruto was going to bring now that he was out to prove himself. Minato and Kushina were wondering what was going to happen when Menma learned of Naruto's return. End flashback. With Naruto are 2 of his female peerage members that are of schooling age. Jean of the Blade Blacksmith, and Valley, the White Dragon Emperor. Both girls are 17 years of like Naruto. "Wow, it's been like forever since I've seen Rias and Akano. I wonder how they will react to seeing me after all these years," asked Naruto, turning to him with a bright smile. Jean said, "Oh, I think they will be thrilled. I mean, who wouldn't be happy to see you again, Nakun?" Naruto's eyebrow twitched at the nickname. "Hump, I think that you will get brutally murdered by them," stated Valley, as she continued to stare ahead. "Really, Valley, you think I will get brutally murdered? It's almost like you don't want me as your master," cried Naruto, as fake anime tears poured down his face. Jean was quick to wrap up Naruto in a hug, shooting Valley a dirty look for hurting her master. "No, Valley, don't say such things. Look at what you've done to Nakun," said Jean. Naruto untangled himself from one of his pawns and gave her an exasperated look. "Really, Jean, how many times do I have to tell you not to call me Nakun?" asked an irritated Naruto. Deciding not to give him an answer, she instead just stuck her tongue out and skipped ahead of them. Shaking his head, Naruto looked over at his other pawn and could see that she was irritated he was forcing her to go to school. "Oh, come on, Valley, this will be good for us. You will be able to make more friends," said Naruto. Valley gave him a look, then turned her attention forwards again. "I don't need any more friends, Naruto, you and the others are enough. The only reason that I agreed to this was to keep an eye on you," said Valley. Sweat dropping as she had seen Jean squatting down to look at a ladybug on the street, and maybe Jean as well. Oh ho ho, so the Cold Valley really does care for little Olmi. Could this be the beginnings of love blossoming in my adorable pawn? Asked Naruto as he slid up to her, his eyebrows wiggling suggestively. The immediate effect of Valley's face turning 50 shades of red, and her to stumble was all Naruto needed as an answer. Don't be absurd, such foolish implications. I am merely making sure you do not tarnish my name, said Valley, trying her best to look all cowly and intimidating. Desperately looking to change the subject, Valley spotted the school. Look, we are here, let's hurry and find our class. I may not like school, but I will not be seen as lazy. And with that, Valley took off. Smiling at his pawn, Naruto was glad that he was finally getting Valley to come out of her shell and open up to him. Being in his peerage had done wonders for her. She now has a family, a group of people she can rely on. Looking over at Jean, who was now lying on the ground looking a beetle, Sweat dropped. Come on Jean, we need to catch up to Valley and find our class, said Naruto. Popping up, Jean smiled sweetly at her king and gently pulled him towards the school. Oh yeah, going out on his own to find his peerage was the best decision of his life. Naruto and company was lucky. Lord Gremory was able to get them all in the same class. Finding the classroom 3A was a little tricky, but, in the end, they were only a few minutes late. Despite Valley's earlier enthusiasm, she was now in no hurry to get to class. Naruto idly wondered if Rias was going to be in his class. For him, it was a catch-22 situation. Naruto wanted to see Rias really badly but didn't want this to be the way that they got reunited. However, Naruto's arch-enemy had others' ideas. After locating the classroom, Naruto and company slid the door open. The teacher of the class stopped his lecture to see what the interruption was. Ah, you must be the new transfer students, good. My name is Mr. Takahashi and I'll be your homeroom teacher, said their teacher. Come up to the front of the class and introduce yourselves. Naruto, Valley and Jean made their way up and took a quick survey of the room. Sure enough, Naruto's arch-enemy rears her ugly head, as he spotted the familiar dark red of a certain friend. Oh fate, thou art a heartless bitch, though Naruto, as the look of shock and then anger overtook her features. Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I hope that we get along this year, said Naruto, good, short, sweet, and to the point. Valley just said her name and turned to look out the window. Hello, my name is Jean and my best friend and love interest in Nakun, said Jean as she gave a slight bow to the class. Naruto did the proverbial spit take and nearly gave himself whiplash, turning to Jean with wide eyes. Valley merely looked on in mild amusement, knowing this would cause a major uproar for her king. Before anyone could comment the declaration, the teacher took control of his class, and prompted the three to sit in the empty seats at the back. While lucky that Rias was seated in the middle of the class, this did nothing to dissuade the heated glares she shot at him all throughout class. If her looks could kill, Naruto would have died 100 times over. Rias was pissed. No, she was more than pissed. If she didn't have such good control of her emotions and her power, she knew that the school would be in serious disarray. Naruto, her best friend after Sona and Akeno, whom she has not seen or hear from in 7 years, just shows up out of the blue as a transfer student and doesn't say anything to her beforehand. She didn't even get to say goodbye to him. He just upped and left one day, and that was that. Even in her anger though, Rias is beyond happy that her friend and secret crush is back. Rias's thoughts were interrupted by the dismissal bell. With lunch period starting, Rias can now get answers from her long-lost friend, even if she has to break every bone in his body to get them. Her train of thought was broken when Akeno laid a hand on her shoulder, signaling it was time to go. Lunch was an interesting affair for Naruto and company, with rumors already circulating from this morning, and Jean's comments in class didn't help any. Naruto decided that they would eat outside. The group of three sat under a large tree in the yard. The three of them taking out the homemade lunches that one of Naruto's other peerage members made for them. After pulling out his bento, Naruto looked over at Jean and sighed. Jean, why did you have to make the comment about me being your love interest? Jean stopped eating for a moment and looked over at Naruto. I am your love interest. I know how jealous you get when people hit on us, and I was going to put a stop to it before it started. Jean stated with conviction. If you looked carefully, you could see a fire blazing in her eyes as she somehow gained a sparkly backdrop. Naruto just sighed at this and cried anime tears, knowing this would just complicate things with Rias and his time here at school. Valley just looked at Naruto with an amused smirk on her face. Seeing her powerful king all flustered and helpless was something Valley thought was hilarious. Just as Naruto got over his slight depression and started to eat with his two pawns, an immense feeling of doom overtook him. It was like that feeling you get when you know that your end is near, and running will only make it worse. Looking up from his lunch, Naruto saw the one thing a god-class being would be afraid of, a pissed-off woman empowered by righteous woman Furry. Well shit, karma, you're as big a bitch as fate is. Thought Naruto as the impending feeling of doom became stronger and closer. Naruto stood up and tried to get in front of this before it became a thing. Now Rias, I know that you're prob, was all he got out before Rias punched him right in the face. His head snapped back, and he comically twirled around until he smashed into the tree behind him. Despite knowing it was coming, and seeing as their master deserved it did nothing to quell the anger and protectiveness that surged through Valley. She had to take a couple of deep breaths to keep from attacking her. Jean had no such control. I suggest you keep your hands to yourself. I wouldn't want to have to hurt you for attacking my king again, stated Jean in the coldest voice Valley and Naruto had ever heard her use. Her magic flared as she was about to make a sword with her blade blacksmith. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder, calming her down. That won't be necessary, Jean, I deserved it, said Naruto as he somehow recovered from that like it never happened. Jean looked like she was going to protest. Naruto sent her a look that said everything was going to be okay. Jean begrudgingly stood down, but not before sending Rias a dirty look. All throughout this confrontation an array of emotions flashed over Rias's face: shock, anger, sadness, and a little bit of fear. After collecting her thoughts, she focused her sights back on the man she was currently angry with, her eyes silently asking questions. Rias, I am truly sorry that I left you the way that I did. When my 10th birthday came around, and I got my evil pieces, I thought that my parents would finally spend a little bit of time with me, but that was not the case, said Naruto. Instead they said that any peerage I created would pale in comparison to Menma's and that they couldn't help me because Menma needed help finding suitable peerage members. It was in that moment I realized that if I wanted to go anywhere in this world I would need to do it by myself. I know you would have helped me, but that was beside the point, said Naruto quickly as he saw Rias about to object. I left that night on a split-second decision to go out and train and find my peerage. I vowed that I would come back and take the underworld by storm. I am sorry I never told you, but I am back now for good. Rias silently searched his face for any sign of deception. After seeing none she sighed and her shoulders sagged. Well, I'm still a little pissed at you, but I guess what is done is done. I don't like it, but with you being back I can assume your trip was successful and you completed your peerage, asked Rias. A slight smirk on her face told Naruto that they were slowly getting back to the way things were. Oh Rias, as a high-class devil I thought you knew what happens when you assume, said Naruto. The teasing tone of his voice made Rias narrow her eyes in curiosity. No Naruto, I was never taught what happens to people when they assume, said Rias, a little taken back where he was going with this. Well, you end up making an ass out of you and me, Naruto said, chuckling at the look of shock on Rias's face. Rolling her eyes at the joke, Rias smacked his arm and looked at the other two girls with him. Seeing the question in her eyes, Naruto immediately remembered that he forgot to introduce his two peerage members to her. All kidding aside, yes, my quest was successful, and I did complete my peerage. Two of my pawns are with me right now. The broody one silently laughing at my misfortune is Valley, the White Dragon Emperor, and holder of Divine Dividing. The cute little blonde one is Jean, and she is the holder of Blade Blacksmith, said Naruto, gesturing to the two peerage members. They both gave a wave in greeting to Rias, as she looked over the members in interest. Well, it is nice to meet you both. My name is Rias Gremory, and this is my queen Akano Himejima. We welcome you to Kuo Academy. If you want you could bring the rest of your peerage over after everyone leaves school and meet in the old schoolhouse. This is now the Occult Research Club. It acts as a front for our devil work, allowing us to leave when we need to. I would like to introduce you to mine and vice versa, said Rias, wondering who the other members of his peerage are going to be. Well, I think that can arrange. It would be only natural that you would want to see the most powerful rookie peerage in person. I mean, this is the one that will take Searzek's title of most powerful peerage from him. Smirked Naruto, arms folded across his chest, looking casual as hell. Rias rolled her eyes before a smile overtook her face. This is what she missed the most, the gentle banter between them, the feeling of ease that his presence created. Not matter how hard she tried, Rias knew that her anger towards the boy was fading faster and faster, every second she spent in this presence. Looking over to him one more time, Rias gave him a slight smile, and bid them farewell. Oh, I almost forgot, come to the old schoolhouse at 5 o'clock. By then everybody will be gone and there will be less chance of being spotted," said Rias over her shoulder as she walked away. Waving back to her, Naruto shouted his confirmation. He then turned to his two partners and gave them a cheesy grin. "Well, that went far better than I expected," said Naruto. "HMMP, I still don't trust her, she seems too close to you for my taste," said Jean with a pout. Secretly her biggest reason was because she hurt her Nakun. "That was far less entertaining than I thought it was going to be. I mean, come on, she only punched you once. I was kind of hoping to see you get pounded into the dirt," said Valley with a slight smirk on her face. While she was mostly kidding, part of her wanted to see it happen. Another part was still a little tense from the first encounter. "Oh Valley, your words stabbed me right in the heart. I thought that you loved me. I guess that was just a cruel dream," Naruto cried out, throwing his arms around Jean. Valley's eyebrow twitched in irritation, more from the fact that Jean was sending her a look of victory at getting to hold their king. After getting over their little moment, they continued to eat the rest of their lunches and get ready for class. With the knowledge that their day was far from over, they made their way back up to the school. Naruto already sending a message to his queen to alert the rest of his peerage about the meeting later that evening. Era, Rias, it would seem you are more than a little glad that Naruto-sama is back," said Akano on the way back to the clubhouse. That ever-present smirk on her face as she covered her mouth with her sleeve. "Yes Akano, it is really good to see him again. I know you only met him a couple of times when we were little, but before you came along he was my best friend. He even promised to help me with that problem," said Rias, still hoping that there would be something he could do when the time came. "Well then let's get back to the club room and alert everyone that we will be having company tonight," said Akano. A light dusting colored her cheeks as she thought about how hot Naruto had become over the years. Era, I wonder if he would be willing to share," thought Akano as her thoughts drifted to the young king they left moments ago. With the final bell ringing, Naruto sprinted out of the classroom. "Gah, that was torture. Why do people even like to come to school? It's like they gain some joy from being talked at by the most boring man in the world," said Naruto, as he made his way down the hall. Valley and Jean were right behind him, smirking at their king's antics. "Oh, I don't know Nakun, I thought school was kind of fun. You get to learn new things and meet new people," said Jean as she skipped up to hang on his right arm. "You would say that, Jean, you were the center of attention all day. The girls all wanting to be your friend, and the boys wanting you to be their girlfriend. It's almost like you don't want me to be your king anymore," said Naruto, leaning on Valley for support. Jean, not catching the sarcasm at first, started to panic, thinking her king didn't want her anymore. "No, Nakun, you're the only one I want as my king. Please forgive me. I won't talk to another boy or girl again," wailed Jean, as she flung herself at Naruto, gripping the front of his shirt and looked up at him with big watery eyes. "It's okay Jean, I didn't really mean it, I was just teasing you. I promise that I'm not mad," said Naruto, trying to calm her down. Jean looked up at him, searching his face for any signs of deception. Finally convinced that her position as pawn and future lover was secured, she turned around with a huff. "Nakun, why do you have to be so mean to me?" asked Jean with a pout. Naruto smiled at the devotion he had from his pieces. This was all he truly wanted, a family that would care unconditionally for him. "Oh come on Jean, don't be mad. I don't like it when you're mad at me. I might have to make you smile again if you don't," said Naruto, as he took a threatening step forward. Valley knew what was coming because he did this to all his female peerage members if they were sad or upset. Jean, not realizing what was going on, turned away again with a huff. "No, you were mean to me and I won't forgive you so easily this time." A second later she burst out in loud laughter as Naruto started tickling her sides. Ah. Jean tried to squirm away from his questing fingers, but he kept her locked in place. Come on Jean, if you forgive me I'll stop, said Naruto, as his fingers started to make their way under her shirt. No, gasped, never. Jean managed to get out, before falling into a new gale of laughter as his fingers tickled Jean's belly button. After tickling her for 5 more minutes Naruto let her, and stood back with a smirk on his face. This never failed to get them happy again. Jean looked over at Naruto and tried to put on an angry face, but she was too happy after the tickling she received. Fine, you know I can't stay mad at you Nakun, especially after you tickle me like that, said Jean. Having finished up, the 3 of them made their way home to pick up the rest of his peerage for the little meet and greet they have later that night. Kuo Academy 5 o'clock. Naruto arrived at the school right on time. Being early was for nerds and being late was for D-bags. Naruto with his hands in his pockets walked down the halls of the old school building towards the main room. When he got there Naruto calmly raised a hand and knocked on the door. Within a few seconds it was opened by a blonde boy around his age with a calm smile on his face. Era you're right on time Naruto-sama, please come in, said Akano as she helped open the door. Taking a quick survey of the room Naruto saw Rias sitting behind a large oak desk, a blonde boy leaning against one of the walls, and a white-haired little girl sitting on one of the couches. It looked like she was eating a bunch of cake. On the other couch was a brown-haired boy siding with a blonde-haired girl. Ah Naruto, I'm so glad you could make it, said Rias. This is my peerage, you've already met Akano my queen. The blonde over by the wall is my knight Kiba Yuto. The white-haired one on the couch here is my rook Kaneko Taju. The brown boy over on the other couch is my pawn Issei Hyodo. And last but not least my bishop Asia Argento. Naruto looked over her peerage with a critical eye, and then smiled widely. Well, it seems you have a good bunch of pieces here Rias. Do I get to know any of their abilities or do I have to find out for myself? Asked Naruto. Oh, by the way, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, first son of the house of Uzumaki, one of the last 72 pillars. Getting a unified greeting from the others, Rias looked over at Naruto and smirked. Well, that depends. Will you be giving me information on your peerage members? Asked Rias, knowing full well that he wouldn't. Touché, well, with an introduction like that I guess it's my turn. Rias Gremory and Company. Naruto stopped for dramatic effect. I am pleased to introduce to you for the first time the most kick-ass peerage in the underworld and overworld. With that, a large red magic circle formed on the floor with the Uzumaki swirl in the middle. The appearance of 15 figures rose out of it. Alright, let's begin with introductions. First, the stunningly beautiful woman in the red dress is my queen Madara Uchiha. She is the last member of House of Uchiha. She is the last known holder of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and Rinnegan. Next are my bishops Laxus Drayar and Master Precht. He also goes by the name Lord Hades. They both hold multiple magics not of this world that with a single one could make them ultimate class devils. When Naruto said this, it drew interested glances from the other members of the room. Then are my knights. The one in the mask and cloak is Darth Raven and Aizen Sosuke is the one in the white trench coat. They are some of the best swordsmen in the world. Next are my rooks. The tall one is Darkseid. He was the rule of his own planet, but it took the entire planet revolting to kill him. I found him and reincarnated him. The wide gray one with the horns is Doomsday. He has a very interesting ability, not counting the immense strength he already possessed, said Naruto, as this drew a smirk from Doomsday. Last, but certainly not least are my pawns, said Naruto. All throughout this Issei was drooling over super hot women that were in this guy's peerage. Asia huffed at him and pinched his arm, getting an ouch and a confused Issei. My first pawn is Mirajane Strauss. She is the one in the dark pink dress. Don't let her looks fool you. She is among my more powerful pieces. The next one is Valley Lucifer. She is the silver-haired beauty with the frown standing in the back. She is the true descendant of the original Lucifer, and also the holder of Divine Dividing, said Naruto. This caused Issei's head to whip towards her and give a look of apprehension. Next is Kara Zor-El. She is the blonde beauty with the sparkling blue eyes standing there in the middle. She is the last of a race called the Kryptonians. After her is Diana Prince, is the tall brunette standing behind Kara. She was the princess of the Amazons on the Mystira, and holder of several powerful ancient weapons. The pink-haired vixen standing next to Diana, her name is Akasha Bloodriver. She is the first descendant of Alucard, the first Shinso vampire. She trained with him for several hundred years before overthrowing him and claiming leadership for the next few thousand. When Naruto said this, it got a lot of shocked expressions from the club members. Vampires in general were more proud than devils, even more so the previous leader. Then you have Jean. She is the other blonde-haired cutie there by Akasha. She is the holder of a rare sacred gear and a lost magic sword. After her is Anne Wayne. She is the host to something called a symbiote. It is a powerful alien parasite that forms a symbiotic relationship with its host. And last but not least is Mei Terumi. She can control 3 elemental-type magics and combine them to make several sub-elements. She has a mastery over them that borders on god-like, finished Naruto, with most of the room wincing when the name of the Lord was spoken. Rias was speechless. The majority of his peerage had unbelievable powers and abilities. The question that plagued Rias was how Get got all of them. By definition, the power level of his pieces should have taken multiple pieces to reincarnate them. How did you get them with you all your pieces? By potential alone some of your pawns are worth 4 or 5 at least, questioned Rias as she looked over the group again. While his introduction was informative, he gave away just enough information to define them but not about their real abilities. Oh that, well it started when I got my pieces. On our 10th birthdays, Menma and I received our evil pieces just like any other pure blood devil. We did the procedure to put our magic into them to respond to us, and us alone. You know the drill. Well, one of Menma's paws turned mutation and Mom, Dad, and Beelzebub-sama turned and fawned all over him. When I put my magic into my pieces, something spectacular happened. Said Naruto. The whole of Rias and her peerage were eager to find out what happened. All my pieces turned mutation. I still don't know how it happened, but I do know that mine are the first to have ever done that. For those of you who don't know, mutation pieces have the ability to reincarnate any piece regardless of the cost. That is why they are so rare and valuable. The rest is history. After that I left to find my peerage and train. Said Naruto. Wow, that amazing. I never would have dreamed that it was possible. Said Akano. Bucko, what is so special in having a peerage of all mutation pieces? Asked Asia. Issei looked over at her as well, curious to what the reason was. The reason that it is so spectacular and terrifying is in theory Naruto could have a peerage of more than 15 pieces. Said Rias. More than 15 pieces? I thought you were only given a 15 pieces. How can you have more than that? Asked Issei. In truth, most of the conversation went over his head. All he could think about were the hot chicks that made up Naruto peerage. Look at it from this perspective, you with the boosted gear were worth 8 pawns, correct? This got a nod from Issei. If one of my pawns were mutation, I could have reincarnated you with just the mutation piece, and then technically I would have a group of pawns worth 15 because of the 8 for you and the 7 regular ones I still have not used. With Naruto having 8 mutation pawns, in theory he could have a group of pawns that are worth 64 pieces. Said Rias, getting a look of understand and then shock from him and Asia. Valley then stepped out from the crowd and walked over towards Issei. So you're my rival then, the one I am fated to fight. You better grow stronger because as you are right now, you would stand no chance. Said Valley, before turning to walk back to the group. While this was going on, the rest of Naruto's peerage started to mingle with Rias's members. Okay, that's a lie, it was just the girls minus Valley and Madara mingling. The guys and 2 girls were a little more on the reserved side. Mirajane and Akano seemed to have no trouble hitting it off, and Jean seemed interested in Kiba's sacred gear. Rias just smiled at the group. While it was good to see them getting along, the knowledge of what was about to transpire was putting her at unease. With that date quickly approaching, Rias began to get more and more desperate for a solution. She was broken out of her thoughts when Naruto slid up to her, putting a hand on her shoulder. It would seem that I came back just in time, huh? Said Naruto. A grin expression came over her face. Yeah, I still have not found a way to get out of it. From what it looks like my only chance would be to beat him in a rating game. Said Rias, not really wanting to talk about that anymore. She walked towards the group, insistent on getting to know a few of Naruto's new members. Naruto was left with that final thought. A rating game, huh? That would be the perfect way to reintroduce myself to the underworld and save Rias. With a foxy grin and a smirk, Naruto entered the crowd, sinister thoughts of how to deal with him already forming in his head. It has been a few days since the return, and meet and greet with Naruto and company. The following days have been pretty uneventful. Naruto's peerage has spent most of their time getting to know the surrounding area. The apartment that Naruto was able to procure is a large 3-story mansion-type house with over 20 rooms and half as many bathrooms. There is a multi-level basement as well with a training ground, hot springs, and a not-so-secret Naruto cave. It's where he conducts his experiments with a sealing art he picked up while traveling called fuinjutsu, or sealing techniques. While so far only mastering sealing arrays and gravity weights, Naruto is looking for a way to seal away magic and energy. If he could, it would make fighting angels and fallen angels a lot easier. However, we now find our hero making his way down the corridors of the old school building. Naruto, with Madara accompanying him, are going to see what Rias and her peerage are doing. Seeing as Naruto is bored right now, and a bored Naruto is a dangerous Naruto. Making their way to the double doors, he dramatically kicks it in to see what the 411 is. Oh yeah, bringing it back. Inside were Rias and the rest of her peerage, celebrating something and looking like they're getting ready to leave for somewhere. Rias, there seems to be a lack of activities for me to do. I'm done setting up my portion of the house and all the common areas. My peerage is filled with lazy gits, and is taking their sweet-ass time finishing their tasks. Please tell me you're doing something fun today, said Naruto, only to receive a whack in the back of his head courtesy of Madara. Master, behave, and the only lazy git in your peerage is you, she said with a huff and a bow of apology towards Rias. Rias just rolled her eyes at their antics. How he was able to get such a peerage she will never know. Okay, I'm sorry, but I have to ask how you got your peerage members to join you anyway, asked Rias with genuine curiosity. Naruto just gave her a smirk, a dollop of fairy dust. Everyone in the rooms just gave him a deadpanned look. Really, was all the answer he got from Rias. I ripped the tag off a mattress. Once again all he got was silence. Fine, I use a secret technique that is only known to a few, said Naruto, as most of the room just stopped paying attention to him at this point. While Rias didn't get the answer she wanted, it was nice to have him and his antics back. Issei, really believing there is such a technique, threw himself at Naruto's feet. What is this secret technique of Master of Women? Praised Issei, as he continuously bowed and fawned at the feet of this god amongst men before them. Perv, was all the answer that Issei got from his cute little junior Kaneko. Madara just snorted at this, knowing that for the most part it was luck, timing, and a little bit of his friendly personality and charm that got all of them to agree. It would seem that Naruto and Issei are full of energy today. I wonder if I could put that to better use, questioned Akeno as she started to move closer towards him. Madara did not like that one bit and wrapped her arms around her king's neck, snuggling into his back. Don't worry, Akeno, I will take care of any extra energy my king may have. Madara could see the look in her eyes. It was the same doe-eyed look the rest of the females in his peerage give him. While she conceded to sharing with them, outside of the peerage was a different story. Akeno looked like she wanted to retort to that but was interrupted by her king. As amusing as it is to see you two fight over Naruto, we have a schedule to keep, said Rias, trying to bring the focus back to the mission at hand. Oh, and what is this grand adventure that you will be going on? Asked Naruto. By the sound of it, this would give him something to do. Rias sighed, knowing that Naruto would probably be tagging along at this point, not that she was disappointed. We just finished a competition with another devil friend of mine and we will be going into the familiar forest, said Rias. A look of absolute joy overcame Naruto's face, and Madara just face-palmed. Noticing the reaction, Rias was just about to comment on it when Madara beat her to the punch. Naruto has a very special familiar that I will not divulge right now, because within minutes of us being there you will meet her, she explained, already preparing for the mental and possibly physical battle ahead of her. Oh Madara, you make it sound like you don't like Tia-chan. She has been nothing but kind to you guys and me, said Naruto, the look of pure innocence on his face as he tried to mask the anticipation of seeing his familiar again. Asia looked at Naruto with curiosity written all over her face. What does your familiar look like? We already got to see everyone else's, is yours special? Madara cut in before Naruto could reply. Don't worry, you will see his familiar tonight, that I can promise. It's like she has Naruto radar or something. Seeing as this was getting them nowhere, Rias prepared a magic teleportation circle for her peerage, as Naruto prepared one for himself and Madara. With a flash of light, the 8 of them appeared in a dark forest. The full moon hung brightly overhead. Issei and Asia looked around in wonder and slight fear, seeing as they were in a creepy-as forest. Alright Issei, Asia, this is the familiar forest. Devils come here to search for a familiar to help them in their journey as devils. The guy that helps us with finding our familiars should be here any minute now, explained Rias as she looked around for the man that was supposed to meet them here. As she said that, the trees behind them began to rustle. Naruto, being the spaz he is, overreacted. Kaya, and an invisible force seemed to erupt from Naruto's hand, and uprooted the trees and rocks in front of him for a good 100 feet before the invisible force died down. When the dust settled, there was a massive trench of destruction in the direction the rustling came from, the result of a startled Naruto. Seriously Naruto, do you have to do this every time you come to the familiar forest? Asked a mysterious man, as he appeared on a tree branch above the group. Dude, don't even start. Ever since the ghost incident of '09, you know what my reaction of ominously rustling trees or bushes, said Naruto. For a brief moment a look of fear and nausea passed over his face. Rias and everyone else looked at Madara in confusion, only to see a similar look only directed at Naruto. All I'm going to say on the matter is that, as strong as we all are, there is a reason that he is arcane. There are a few things that apparently freak him out, and ghosts are one of them. Madara replied. This drew a massive sweat drop from everybody, except Naruto, Madara, and Zatoji. Dude, don't even start. Ghosts are awful. You can't see them or hurt them. They touch you in inappropriate places when you sleep. They're like slutty little ninjas. The only thing you can do is run, said Naruto with a surprising amount of seriousness in his voice. When everyone was done sweat dropping, Rias drew everyone's attention back to the matter at hand. Issei, Asia, this is Zatoji. He is the familiar master of the forest. He will be helping us in finding them, Rias explained, as she looked over at the 2 newbies and motioned them towards Zatoji. Oh, and I am Sue, not doing his rhyming, not even going to try. Okay kiddies, what kind of familiar would you like to have? He asked as he looked over the 2 of them. Issei gained a perverted grin. Oh, do you have one with big? Whatever he was going to say next was cut off by a deafening roar. So loud was it that the area around them seemed to vibrate in intensity and power. Everyone froze in fear, and looked overhead as a massive draconian shape blotted out the moon with its massive size. Issei, being the only one being able to talk, said what everyone was thinking. What the F*** is that? He shouted. Rias looked over at Naruto, who seemed to have an excited look on his face, and Madara, who was putting her palm to her face. Yup, I knew it, Naruto radar. She muttered, her whole demeanor screamed exasperation. Madara, who is that? Questioned Rias as she looked on in slight fear. As if to answer her question, the massive shape slammed into the ground behind them, lowered its head and roared right at Naruto. Madara rolled her eyes at her king's antics, that is Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, the only female dragon king and the strongest of the 5 dragon kings, said to have power comparable to that of a Satan, and Naruto's familiar. What? Everyone shouted. Rias and everyone looked on in slight awe and fear. Zatoji, is it true? The one who refused to take a master chose Naruto? Asked Rias. Yeah, it's true. I was just as shocked as you were. I don't even know how he did it. I don't even think his peerage knows, he said as he looked over at Madara for confirmation. Yeah, no matter how much we beg and plead, he won't tell us how he convinced her to join him, Madara complained. So far it was a secret only known between them. Naruto in the meantime was having a stare down with Tiamat, when suddenly there was a bright flash of light and her massive size began to shrink down. When the light died down, there was a woman in the place of a dragon. She had royal blue hair that went down to the middle of her back, and her eyes were a shade darker than her hair. She had a body type that was similar to Madara. She appeared before them in a long flowing black dress, and was barefoot. Naruto, it's been so long since you last visited me. Why don't you come and see me anymore? You promised you would visit me more, whined Tiamat as she ran towards Naruto. Naruto smiled and held his arms out to wrap her up in a hug, until he saw the dangerous glint in her eyes. Wait, Tia-chan, I'm sorry, I promise I'll visit more often, Naruto shouted as he started to run in the opposite direction. No, you already made that promise. Now you must be punished. With that she launched a massive blue fireball at Naruto. With that the two of them went charging into the forest. Everyone just stared blankly as explosions went off in the distance. Large balls of fire and large black mushroom clouds of smoke popping up was the only indication that Naruto was still alive. Rias and Zatoji decided to move on and let Naruto catch up. Zatoji looked over at Issei and Asia and quietly studied them for a minute. Okay, well, back to the matter at hand. There are all kinds of familiars. There are cute ones, strong ones, poisonous ones. Let me know and we will find it, he said, as he pulled out a weird-looking flip binder. Issei, before you make a stupid remark, think for a minute. This familiar has to serve a purpose other than just looking hot, said Rias, trying to stop the perverted express before it leaves the station. Well, I don't really know what I want right now. How about Asia goes first and we'll find mine afterwards, said Issei. Getting a nod from Rias, Zatoji looks over at Asia. Okay, what kind of familiar are you looking for? I would like to have a cute one, but also a strong one as well, said Asia. Nodding at her request, he motioned the group to follow him into the forest. The trek into the forest was not quite what Issei and Asia had been expecting. They had seen a few different familiars on their journey. A couple of Undine fighting on a lake, and had a run-in with a slime familiar that started to dissolve all of the girls' cloths. Issei thought that was the most perfect familiar for him, until Madara used some weird move and the slime was incinerated by these weird black flames. When the tentacles tried to make an appearance, they were met with the same fate. It took Issei 15 minutes to overcome the loss of his familiar, quietly weeping in the corner about how many naked women he could have seen with it. Oh, look at that up in the tree there, it's a spirit dragon. They are really rare. It is said that they will only appear before a pure spirit, Zatoji explained, getting an odd look from just about everyone in the group. Considering was one person may or may not have seen, you can guess who it was that had a lack of surprise. Well, we know then it isn't here for Issei-senpai then, said Kaneko, causing Issei to fall to the ground a weep at the lack of respect being showed to him. Getting over the pain of Kaneko's words, Issei turned to address Asia. Would you like to have that as your familiar, Asia? Asia looked at the spirit dragon and then nodded at Issei. Well then I shall acquire it for you then, Asia, said Issei, as he marched over to the tree and started to do a little shimmy up to the branch where the dragon resided. Issei, being the incredible individual that he is, chose to ignore the warnings of the more experienced devils and familiar master and did things this own way. Okay, dragon. I promised Asia that I would get her a familiar, and that is exactly what I am going to do, he proclaimed as he reached a hand out to grab it. Issei, be careful. Male dragons tend to not like males of other species at all, like never ever, explained Zatoji. Alas, it was too late, and Issei got the daylights shocked out of him. Madara idly thought that Laxus might like this familiar as well. Burnt and in pain, Issei did the only logical thing that he could. He made a fist and tried to punch the dragon in revenge, only to get shocked again, this time falling out of the tree in the process. The spirit dragon looked over the group and then flew down to Asia and landed in her arms. It would seem that the dragon has taken a liking to Asia after all. I guess she is the pure heart of the group, Akeno commented, and Kaneko and Kiba went to check on Issei. Rias then went through the steps for Asia to make the dragon her familiar. As she was finishing, Naruto made his appearance at the opposite side of the clearing as an incoming projectile rocketing towards them. Cloths singed and torn, Naruto was smacked by a massive force and was making a beat line right towards them. Madara them stepped up and did something that shocked the group further. A ghostly blue flaming rib cage formed around her, a single skeletal arm appeared on the left side. She raised it up and caught Naruto before his projectile-like body could harm anyone else. Oh Madara, you do care. I was just having a little discussion with Tia-chan. Our words got out of control and she decided that she wanted to see how far she could smack me with her tail, a slightly disoriented Naruto said as he tried to get his bearings back. Just then Tiamat landed in the clearing and made her way over to them, and she went back into her human form again. It's okay Madara, I've worked out all my anger now, she said, but then turned to the group. Oh, you must be some of Naruto's friends. Well, I'm Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon and Naruto's familiar. Nice to meet you guys. Rias stepped up and introduced herself and the rest of her peerage before turning to Issei. Sorry Issei, but we are out of time. We will have to come back another time to get you a familiar. Issei looked over at Asia with hers, and didn't really mind that he didn't get one. He kept his promise and that was okay with him. Naruto gathered Madara and Tiamat next to him as he prepared transport back to the academy. Apparently she didn't trust him to visit, so she's going with him back to the human world. Magical circles appeared underneath them with their respective symbols, and with that they disappeared from the familiar forest. It has been a couple of days since they journeyed to familiar forest. Naruto has gotten increasingly worried about Rias. As the week drew on, she slowly became more and more agitated. Everything seemed to be fine with her, so he had no idea what it was that was making her nervous. One night after a stressful day of contracts, and spending time with his peerage and friends, Naruto sat in his room deep in thought before he got ready for bed. Rias was extremely agitated today. Tomorrow I'm going to find out what it is that is bothering her. I don't think it's the engagement because she still has a few more years before she has to deal with that. He thought, knowing that in just a little while the majority of his peerage will be slipping into his room to sleep with him. Naruto put on his sleepwear and got ready for bed. His routine was disturbed when a red magic circle appeared on the floor. It belonged to the House of Gremory. Rias appeared, and without any sudden warning went over to him and kissed him on the lips. It wasn't a friendly kiss, but one full of need and some sadness. After breaking the kiss, Rias just looked at him for a moment and then started to undress. Please Naruto, I need you to take me now. Please take my virginity, I need you to make love to me right now. Pleaded Rias, who was fully naked right now, and trying to drag Naruto over to the bed. Naruto, being the stout and worldly man that he is, just stood there with a shocked and flabbergasted expression on his face. Taking his silence and lack of response as a no, Rias immediately wilted and shrunk away from him. Am I not good enough? I know that some of the women in your peerage are prettier than I am, but please give me a chance. Hearing the quiver in her voice was what brought Naruto out of his shock and back to reality. No Rias, you are beautiful, and more than worthy. This is just so sudden. Why the sudden need for me to take your virginity? I know that you like me, but I don't think that your love for me is the only reason behind this sudden endeavor. Said Naruto, still trying to get a grasp of what was happening. Rias, whatever is happening, this isn't the way to go about it. Rias, is this about your engagement? Is that what this is about? Asked Naruto. Rias just shifted back and forth and finally relented. Yes Naruto, it is about the engagement. Well, yes and no. The thing is that I do want you to be the one to have my virginity. I've wanted that for a while, and I think you have known that as well. However, some things have come up and this was the only way I could think of to get out of it. The way I saw it was a win-win. I get out of my engagement and I get to make love to you. Said Rias. Naruto took a minute to study her eyes and found no hints of deceit. Look Rias, I have really liked you since like I was 10 years old. I would be honored to do this with you, but I don't think that now is the time to do that. Let's put your cloths back on, and we can discuss this tomorrow at school. I promise you we will find a way out of this mess. Said Naruto. He walked up to her and draped her shirt over her shoulders and covered her up. Bringing his can and softly caressed her face. Rias leaned into the warmth of his hand. She turned her head and softly kissed the palm. Thank you Naruto for being here with me. I don't think I could have gotten through this alone. If you weren't here to talk me through this, just think what might have happened. I might have gone to Issei, and knowing him he would have taken advantage of me, said Rias with a shudder. Issei sneezed and he was getting ready for bed. He got the feeling that someone was talking smack about him. Probably that no good, stupid Naruto that seems to have Rias and all of those other pretty girls around him. As Rias was finished getting dressed, another magic circle appeared in his room. This time it still had the crest for the House of Gremory, but the color of it was silver instead of red. Seriously, is there like a magical back channel that anyone can connect to so they can get into my house whenever they want? Asked an irritated Naruto. When the light died down, Graphia Lucifuge stepped out of the circle and sent an annoyed look towards Rias. Rias-sama, were you really going to try and get out of your agreement by stooping so low? Said Graphia, not even bothering to look and see who it was, assuming probably Issei. Oi, what is with the attitude Graphia? You are really late. Rias has already been here for like 10 minutes. We could have done it already, and there would have been nothing you could have done about it. You're lucky I talked her out of it. said an annoyed Naruto, not liking being called lowly in his own house. What Naruto was really lucky about was that none of his peerage had heard any of this yet. My apologies Naruto-sama, I did not realize whose house I was in. Nevertheless, this was an unforgivable act. Rias. What are Searzek-sama and Lord Gremory going to say about this? Asked Graphia. This got a look of anger from Rias. My purity is mine to do with as I please, and if I choose to give it to Naruto instead of my so-called fiancé, then so be it. I already stated this once and I will do so again, I will not marry that man. Stated Rias, as she crossed her arms over her chest. Graphia just sighed and looked back over at Rias. Searzek-sama and Lord Gremory wish for me to relay a message to you. If you would please come with me. Stated Graphia as she prepared another magic circle. May I bring Kano with me to the meeting? Asked Rias. Your queen, of course she can come. It is only right that a king's queen be with them in times like this. Said Graphia, turning back to face Naruto before they departed. I'm sorry about all of the trouble Naruto, we will be talking about this tomorrow in the clubroom. Said Rias, as she gave his one last sad smile before they both disappeared. Naruto let out a large sigh and fell back on his bed. Just as things were beginning to calm down, his door burst open with the female portion of his peerage making their way into the room. They were all cheerfully talking to each other before they took in the visage of their king. Sensing something was wrong, Madara stepped towards her king. Naruto, you look upset, is everything alright? After sitting up, Naruto turned to look at his peerage. No, it would seem that the riser engagement is taking a much earlier turn than we anticipated. We will be discussing it tomorrow at school. Be ready for me to summon you at any time tomorrow because I don't know when the discussion will take place. Said Naruto, getting a series of nods from them. Carrot turned to go inform the others before they went to bed. When she returned, they all made themselves comfortable on Naruto's super king-sized bed and drifted off to sleep. Not knowing what the situation will be like when they arrived, Naruto decided to bring Laxus along with Valley and Jean today. Most likely they will be skipping school today, so there was no problem with Laxus coming along with them. As they approached the old schoolhouse, Naruto felt a familiar presence inside and instantly knew that he made the right call. Naruto, there is a massive magical signature inside. Judging by your facial expressions you know who it is. Commented Laxus, as he took in the situation that lie before them. Naruto gave him a nod and pushed open the doors to the main room. The air was tense as everyone seemed to be waiting for him, and whoever he brought with him to arrive. Laxus idly glanced over at Graphia and confirmed that she was the massive magical signature that he sensed before they arrived. He trusted his king's judgment but was ready to act just in case. Good, I'm glad you guys have arrived. We have a lot to discuss today. The first thing we need to go over is... Rias started to was interrupted by Graphia. Rias-sama, would you like for me to tell them? She asked, seeing as this was a very delicate subject for her and wanted to help in any way she could. No, it's okay Graphia, I can do it. Okay, so the truth is... Rias was once again interrupted by a large orange magical circle appearing on the floor. The center of the circle seemed to have a large fiery bird, and then all of a sudden out of the circle erupted a pillar of flames. TCH, you were right Naruto, it is that arrogant prick. Said Laxus, clicking his tongue in annoyance. Whoa, what's going on? Asked Issei in confusion and fear, as Asia hid behind him and looked over to see a man step out of the fire. Phoenix, was all Kaneko had to say on the matter, as she looked over at him in disdain. The man stood around 6'1", and had blonde hair and blue eyes. He appeared to be in his early 20s and wore a maroon dress shirt with the top few unbuttoned, with matching maroon pants. It's been so long since Riser has been to the human world. He said as he took a look around the room. His lecherous gaze fell upon Rias and a wide grin spread across his face. As Rias, my darling Rias, it is so good to see you again. Riser walked straight over to Rias and began to touch her, and put his hands on her. This got an extreme reaction out of Issei. Hey you bastard, who do you think you are to just put your hands on her? Shouted Issei as looked at him in confusion and rage. Oh, and who might you be? Questioned Riser, mildly amused. My name is Issei Hyodo, and I am Rias Gremory-sama's pawn. He said as he looked straight back at Riser. Oh, well okay then, good for you. Said Riser as he went back to feeling up Rias. Graphia, who is this guy? Asked Issei, and Asia looked over at her too. This is Riser Phoenix-sama, and Rias-sama's fiancé, she said, getting a wide variety of reactions from the room's occupants. This tea made by Rias Queen is superb, Riser commented, making sure to undress her with his eyes as fast as possible. Thank you, Akeno said with a smile, but everyone except Riser could see that it was extremely forced. The whole room was tense. Kiba and Kaneko looked to be at the end of their ropes with him, and Issei was only calm because Asia was keeping him that way. Jean and Valley was extremely annoyed because Riser kept sending lecherous glances at them, thinking that they might be a part of Rias Peerage. He seemed to completely ignore the presence of Naruto and Laxus. Enough, Riser. How many times do I have to tell you that I will not have anything to do with you, and I will not marry you? Shouted Rias, as she shot up from the couch after Riser tried to get his hands further up her skirt. Riser knows what you have said in the past, but you must take a husband. Your family is very worried about their bloodline, said Riser, an arrogant smirk upon his face as he drew closer towards Rias. It has taken Naruto and Laxus all their willpower to stay quiet this long. Naruto may be a loud mouth, but even he knows there are times for his foolishness and when to be serious. Sadly, this was a time to be serious. Oh, I have every intention of taking a husband, Riser, said Rias. Riser smirked, thinking his charm and wit finally won her over. I'm glad you see it my way. He never go to finish as Rias cut him off. However, it will be someone of my choosing. Even the heirs in the houses of old had the right to pick their own husbands, said Rias, further backing away from Riser. I bear the name of Phoenix, and I will not allow you to tarnish that name. I will have you, and I will take you back with me to the underworld, even if I have to burn each and every one of your servants to do that, said Riser in anger, his phoenix fire starting to burn around him. Now this is where I draw the line. I have been quiet this entire time, but I think it's time that I step into the fray, said Naruto, coming between Riser and Rias. Tch, well, if it isn't the Uzumaki trash, you don't have the right to call yourself a true devil. You don't even have the right to be in my presence. If you parents didn't want you, what makes you think you can stand next to me, an elite of the House of Phoenix? Said Riser, increasing the level of fire around him. Whatever Naruto or anyone was about to say was cut short by a flash of lightning and a sickening crack as Laxus flashed at Riser and delivered a lightning-enhanced punch right to his jaw. The explosion of lightning off his body further launched him into the wall behind them. Everyone had stunned expressions on their faces. Grafia, a seasoned war vet, didn't even see him move. Laxus landed between Naruto and Riser with a look of rage nobody had ever seen on his usually calm face. That is the one thing you will not say in my presence. My king gave me a new life after my old one fell to pieces. He took me in, gave me a family and a new purpose in life. It is because of him that I am alive, and I will do everything in my power to protect that, said Laxus in an unusually calm voice, betraying what his face was actually showing. Riser slowly picked himself up off the floor, and for the first time in a long time he spit out a glob of blood that was pooling in his mouth. You low-class devil trash, who do you think you are to touch a high-class devil such as myself? Yelled Riser as fire exploded around him. Equally pissed off, a pillar of lightning erupted from Laxus. The amount of demonic magical power he were giving off was staggering for just a bishop. Grafia made to intervene, but before she could make a move, Laxus let loose a massive lightning bolt that instantly disintegrated 3/4 of his body, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. After regenerating, Riser made to attack this devil trash but was once again stopped when Laxus delivered a devastating uppercut to his stomach. This caused lightning to arc and dance all around his body, causing him to fall to the floor once again. Finally finding her voice, Grafia stepped into the fray. If you don't stop now, I won't hold back on the honor of my King Sirzax, said Grafia, letting a fraction of her power out, trying to cow them into compliance. Laxus merely looked back at her, before upping the voltage that was dancing wildly around his body. Naruto stepped up to stop him from getting into a fight with the current strongest queen. Notice I said current. It's okay, Laxus, I think he got the message, said Naruto, calming down his longtime friend and bishop. Laxus gave one last sneer towards Riser and then powered down his lightning. Grafia went over to check on Riser. What did you do to me? I can't feel anything from the neck down, you bastard, yelled Riser, panic starting to come through in his voice. This got everyone to look at him in fear and awe, then at Laxus for an explanation. Smirking, he looked over towards Riser. I merely overloaded your nervous system. You see, the human body, devils included, use electrical neurological impulses to feel and move. What I basically did was short-circuit your nervous system with just the right amount of electricity. It's going to take a few minutes for your brain to remember how to make your body move. Your regeneration won't help now because while your nerves are healed, the balance they had is not fixed yet. With each passing word, the cruel smirk on his face got bigger and bigger. Hopefully this will teach him not to run his mouth. A look of horror and awe swept over the occupants of the room. Graphia went over to see if her healing magic could speed up the process. In truth, she was a little bit scared of him now. The move he just pulled required unbelievable precision that most devil don't have with their elements. Graphia picked him up and propped him on the couch, so they could finish the discussion. Since we seem to have reached an impasse, Searsex proposed an alternate solution if a decision couldn't be reached. She said, trying to get everyone's attention back on course. This got Rias to perk up and look over at Graphia intently. He proposed that the dispute be settled with an unofficial rating game. Spoke Graphia, getting looks from everyone in the room, save Riser, who could just move his eyes and mouth. Really, how far does he think he can meddle in my life? Asked Rias in anger at not being consulted with this and having it just be decided. Shall I tell him that you refuse to do it? Questioned Graphia, getting everyone to look over at Rias for her answer. No, of course I'm going to do it. This will give me a chance to win back my freedom from him. Said Rias. No, you won't be doing it, Rias, because you won't be getting your freedom, said Naruto, speaking up again, getting confused looks from most people in the room. Seeing the questioning looks, Naruto elaborated. What Searsex is doing is unbelievable cruel. This got shocked looks of astonishments from everyone, and a look of anger from Graphia. What Searsex is doing is giving you false hope. You don't really have a chance of winning your freedom from Riser. Even he can see it from over there on the couch. I mean, no disrespect to you, Rias, but what chance do you have against him in a rating game? Naruto questioned, getting looks from everyone. You have an incomplete peerage. 2 of them are as green as the grasses outside in the field of combat. You're going up against a supposed genius and prodigy of the Phoenix, who has years more experience and a full peerage. He has virtually a perfect record, except for 2 losses that were on purpose, and you only have 3 battle-ready pieces at the moment. I ask again, what chance do you really have against him? Asked Naruto, and while the question was directed at Rias, it seemed to be aimed at Graphia. Rias, who at the start of his speech to angry at this lack of faith, slowly deflated as he pointed more and more stuff out for her. She could see this was a pre-verbal David and Goliath situation. No, if Rias is to have a true fighting chance at gaining her freedom from Riser, then she will not be the one going into the rating game. Naruto Uzumaki, pure-blood devil of the House of Uzumaki, requests to fight for Rias in her stead. Seeing as she is unable to at this moment in time, said Naruto as he looked over at Rias and winked at her, telling her that it was his turn to protect and fight for her to make up for the years of absence. Graphia reappeared back at her home in the underworld, having just returned from the human world. To say that the visit took an interesting turn was an understatement. Graphia tuned and quickly made her way towards her king's office to inform him of the change in plans. When she arrived, Graphia quickly saw that he was not alone. It looked like the heads of the Phoenix House were there along with the heads of the Gremory and the Uzumaki. Graphia could understand why the Phoenix and Gremory were here, but the presence of Minato and Kushina baffled her. Deciding to put that out of her mind for the moment, she strode over towards them to inform the house heads of the decision that was reached. Graphia, we were just talking about Rias' engagement. Has she accepted the proposal, or is she opting for the rating game option? Questioned Searsex, seeing as his queen came to deliver the final answer. Well, there seems to be a slight wrinkle. Rias chose option number 3. Said Graphia. This drew questioning looks from everyone in the room. Seeing as they were about to ask her to elaborate, Graphia continued. She and Riser weren't the only pure-blooded devils there today. It would seem that your son, Minato and Kushina, has taken the role of defender for Rias. He accepted Riser's challenge to a rating game in the place of Rias. Naruto had some not-so-nice things to say about you, Searsex, and you as well, Lord and Lady Gremory, but that is for a later time. Said Graphia, who once again drew looks of confusion from her statement. Tell me what happened, said Searsex, wanting to know how the meeting went down, and what Naruto said about him. Grafia then proceeded to give an account of what went down up to the point of Naruto taking the place of Rias in the rating game. Seeing everyone take a second to digest what just transpired, Grafia continued, however there is more. Flashback. Know if Rias is to have a true fighting chance at gaining her freedom from Riser, then she will not be the one going into the rating game. Naruto Uzumaki, pure blood devil of the house of Uzumaki, requests to fight for Rias in her stead. Seeing as she is unable to at this moment in time, said Naruto as he looked over at Rias and winked at her, telling her that it was his turn to protect and fight for her to make up for the years of absence. Riser looked at him for a brief moment and just started to laugh at him. Seeing as he was getting more control of his body back, the laughter got stronger as the minutes wore on. Finally, when he calmed down, he gave Naruto the most condescending look he had seen thrown at him. I will admit that your bishop is pretty powerful, but the only reason that I got hurt as much as I did was because it was a cheap trick. He got me when I was not prepared and had not time to fight back or defend myself, said Riser. The level of arrogance in his voice astounded even Grafia. You, who was rejected by your household, thinks that he can beat me, a virtual prodigy of my own house. You even said it yourself. I have years more experience and I am far more powerful than you lot. At this time Riser gained mobility back in his body, and he started to walk around room. If you're so confident in yourself, then it should be no problem letting me fight for Rias in her place. Surely you want Rias to realize how much better of a devil you are in comparison to me. What better way than by stomping my ass in a rating game? Questioned Naruto. Everyone except Riser could see that he was just goading him on and playing to his vanity. Very well, I accept you fighting for Rias in this rating game in her stead. When you lose, however, you have to also live the rest of your life as a slave to the House of Phoenix, said Riser. It became obvious that he was trying to milk this deal for all it was worth. That suited Naruto just fine. Destroying his pride in the rating game and getting Rias back would be prize enough. Just then another magical circle appeared behind Riser, a smirk playing on his lips as 15 figures appeared behind him. He had summoned his peerage. Trying to intimidate Naruto was the best guess he could come up with. As you can see, I do have a full set, and all of my pieces were strategically picked to be the absolute best for their position. Riser bragged, only to look over at Issei, who had a sudden fit of the hysterics. Everyone could see him crying and cursing out Riser in the corner of the room, Asia trying her best to console him. What the hell is the matter with him? Questioned Riser, as he looked over in confusion and disgust at Issei. He has a dream to become the harem king, and seeing you with a peerage full of pretty girls set him off, explained Rias, who looked to have a tired expression on her face. This drew looks of disgust from most of Riser's peerage. Oh really? Riser smirked over in Issei's direction. Boy, because you are a low-class devil you will never get to do this then. Riser then started groping the s of two of his peerage members while he made out with his queen. This sent Issei into another fit of curses and a look of rage and jealousy appeared on his face. That's all well and good, Riser. I guess since you showed me yours I will have to show you mine, interrupted Naruto, seeing as this little game of tit for tat was just wasting time. A magical circle appeared behind Naruto and 12 figures appeared, who were joined by Laxus, Valley and Jean, who fell in behind Naruto. This action got a look of anger from Riser, seeing as the two girls he had been ogling were part of Naruto's peerage. Riser, to say the least, was a little taken aback at what he saw. Naruto's peerage looked pretty intimidating to say the least. While his two rooks looked intimidating, the others just looked average to him. Riser, this is my peerage. I also have a full set and will be battling you in the rating game. Let us have this game in 5 days' time, just enough to go through strategies and do any last-minute preparations, said Naruto, getting a nod of approval from Riser. Well, Rias, when I am done pounding your little boyfriend here into the ground, I will take you back to the underworld with me and make you mine. In fact, I might even claim all of the girls in your peerage as well. That little blonde-haired one looks absolutely innocent, and I really want to break her, said Riser, as he leered at Asia, visibly undressing her with his eyes. This drew a howl of rage from Issei as he charged at Riser, his boosted gear out and fist cocked back to punch his lights out. Mira, get him, Riser commanded, as a red blur shot past him to intercept Issei. Mira stopped and pivoted on her front leg and spun. Her staff shot out at Issei only for it to get caught by Kara. Issei didn't have time to stop seeing as Kara appeared out of nowhere and ran into her. It honestly felt like running into a brick wall. Mira tried desperately to free her staff from the grip of the blonde-haired girl, but she literally would not budge an inch. Then with just a squeezing of her hand the staff shattered and Mira was sent flying back at Riser via palm strike from Kara. Xuelin jumped in front of her body to catch her, only to be sent back into the wall with her. Everyone was shocked at the display of power Kara just showed off. Riser just gained an angry sneer, 5 days Uzumaki, then you and you Peerage will be slaves to the House of Phoenix. I can't wait to break all of you Peerage members in. He sneered. Riser looked back to see that Xuelin had gathered up Mira rather gingerly, and got ready to head back. Just as Riser was about to teleport back to the underworld, a little blonde-haired missile flew past him and ran straight into Naruto. Naruto looked down and saw it was his childhood friend Revel giving him a hug. He smiled down at her and returned it, getting a blush from said girl. I just wanted to express my gratitude that you decided to come back, and to invite you over for tea sometime so we can catch up on things. Said Revel as the blush on her face intensified, buried her head into Naruto's chest to hide it from him. This action got looks of envy and jealousy from his Peerage and Rias. Naruto just chuckled at her and gave her a nod in acceptance. There was also the fact that she seemed to not have faith in Riser, for the context of her question indicated that Naruto would still be free to make such decisions. This fact was not lost on Naruto as he gazed down at Revel. Good, you should feel honored that a high-class devil like me is taking the time to ask someone like you to tea. Said Revel with a huff and turned around and crossed her arms. This drew more chuckles from Naruto who scooped her up in another hug from behind. Oh Revel, you're so adorable when you get all soon like that. Said Naruto as he rubbed his cheek against hers, getting a megawatt blush from Revel as she tried to extract herself from him. Finally freeing herself and heading back over to Riser who looked like he was going to have an aneurysm any second, waved one last time at Naruto before they disappeared. Naruto looked at his Peerage and gave them the okay to head back to their house, but not before his female members stole a quick kiss from him. Well, not so quick for Mirajane, which drew scowls from everyone else. Naruto just chuckled at their antics and waved at them as they teleported out. Graphia was just beginning to recover from seeing Naruto's Peerage. She idly noted that Rias and company didn't seem as affected as she was, so they obviously met them before. Graphia began to wonder if they knew to the extent of power that Naruto's Peerage seemed to possess. While they all seemed very powerful in their own right, there were 3 that made her nervous, the 2 large rooks and his queen. It was carefully hidden, but the queen and tall rook had absolutely massive magical reserves, and the gray rook seemed odd to her. There was a fair amount of power, but it didn't possess the same aura of a true living creature. Graphia was taken out of her musings by Rias, who was chasing Naruto around the room for insinuating that she was weak in front of everybody. Graphia's eyes drew over towards Naruto and she began to wonder what he was hiding, to be able to instill such loyalty in such powerful allies. Rias, I must return to the underworld to inform Lucifer-sama of the decision reached here today. Rias, I hope you trust Uzumaki-sama because your fate is now in his hands. Said Graphia as she made her way to leave. Graphia, before you go, tell the Gremories that I am very disappointed in them. While I will always appreciate what they have done for me in my childhood, I can't be more disappointed by their actions. The Gremories pride themselves on loving their servants as their own family, yet they trade their daughter away to a man who does not love her like a common pawn. They are afraid of their line going extinct, but that is just another lie. This is nothing more than them wanting to make a super devil at the cost of a young woman's happiness. Their greed has astounded me. If this is the famous Gremory love, then I want no part of it. I will stick to being just friends. Said Naruto. Graphia once more looked at him in shock and slight anger at what he said. However, there was a nagging true to his words. Looking at it from that perspective, this deal was incredibly shallow. Rias would have married in time and would have made a good choice in a partner. Maybe Naruto's words held more truth than she would have liked. Deciding to say nothing, Graphia activated the magic circle and departed for the underworld, hoping that maybe with Naruto competing some good can come of this situation. End flashback. When Graphia finished her tale, the whole group had fallen silent. Lord and Lady Gremory looked especially upset at the things Naruto said about their family. Yet this caused them to think about what he said and how there might be some truth to his words. Lord and Lady Gremory, Lucifer-sama, please let me apologize for my son's actions. It would seem that he has still not learned his manners and said some dreadful things about your family. Said Minato, trying to some damage control and hoped that this didn't ruin any of their friendships. No need to apologize, Minato, we have always known that Naruto would take this decision the hardest. However, I can see some truth to his words. Venelana dear, perhaps we did make a hasty decision in setting up this contract between Riser and Rias. We could see from day one that they two of them would have made a great couple. Said Lord Gremory as he looked over at this wife. I don't know, but it's too late now. All we can do is wait and see the outcome of the rating game between Riser and your son Kushina. Said Venelana, and she looked over at the other two wives. Sirzex seemed to be deep in thought about what transpired just now and was about to ask more questions when Grafia began to speak again. Also Sirzex, while I was there I got a brief glance at Naruto-sama's full peerage. 3 of his pieces set me on edge. Said Grafia, as she got looks of curiosity from everyone in the room. Kushina was the first to find her voice. What do you mean, set you on edge? Grafia looked uncomfortable for a minute before she answered. I don't really know how to describe it. One of them, his queen, had this feeling of absolute power about her. It was also weird, her eye changed to these weird patterns every now and then. I didn't get a real good look. The 2 pieces that really bothered me were his rooks. One has large enough magical reserves that he could almost be an ultimate class bishop, and the other gave off this weird vibe. Answered Grafia. This drew even more curious glances from the group. Sirzex took this opportunity to ask, weird how? Did it seem like it was angels and fallen angels weird? No, it was definitely not affiliated with any church. It gave off this feeling of death, like it was living yet not truly alive. Like I couldn't hear a heartbeat, or even see him breath. Answered Grafia, whatever that thing was, hopefully they got to see what it does and learn more about it. Well then it would seem that Naruto has gone and got him some interesting pieces. I personally can't wait to see how strong he is now. Said Sirzex. Grafia just rolled her eyes at him. Kushina, I still don't understand why you did what you did to Naruto, he seems to have gotten so powerful. Why couldn't you take care of him like you did Menma? Questioned Venelana. It still baffled her that a mother could ignore one of her children. I told you Menma had more potential, and Naruto would have just let the Uzumaki name down. I still love him, but Menma is the future of the clan and needs us more than Naruto does. Said Kushina. She did in fact feel bad about abandoning her son, but it was for the good of the family. Naruto should have known that it was nothing personal against him. Finally Lady Phoenix decided to chime in about the wayward Uzumaki child. Well, aside from the stakes of this match, I am very excited to see how much little Naruto has grown. This is going to be a very hard test for him. As Venelana was about to reply, the doors to the room burst open and a young man walked in. He looked to be about 17 years old, and stood around 5'11". He had longish red hair and purple eyes. This was Menma Uzumaki, the current heir to the Uzumaki family. So it would seem that my embarrassment of an older brother has returned. Well, it doesn't matter how strong he's gotten because he will always be trash in my presence. He may have a full peerage, but his servants are inferior to mine. I can't wait for this rating game, because either way I get what I want. If he loses, then I get to see him as a slave for the rest of his life. If he wins and does happen to have some good pieces, then I can force him to trade them over to me, and I can take Rias from him for the good of the family. Said Menma, shocking everyone at his level of arrogance. It was only second to Riser, and even then it was pushing it. Oh, and what makes you think that Naruto will just hand over his strong pieces and Rias to you? Questioned Sirzex. It was not in a condescending way, he was genuinely curious at the young boy's reasoning. Because I am his better, and if he doesn't, then I will formally challenge him to a rating game like the one he is in now. Then once he loses, all that is his will belong to me. Stated Menma as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Once again the sheer arrogance and vanity was astounding. It was as if there were 2 Risers or 2 Menmas in the world. Even Kushina and Minato had the decency to look a little sheepish at their son's behavior. Everyone just seemed to shake their heads at him. Well, we will know the outcome in 5 days. Now I believe we need to go discuss the battlefield and what the landscape is going to look like. Said Sirzex, and with that he bid his guests farewell. Flash forward 5 days. I mean, really, who wants to see training? We find Naruto chilling on the couch of the occult research club room, casually drinking tea as Rias was pacing back and forth across the room. Naruto's peerage was around him, not seeming nervous at all, and this irritated Rias immensely. "Okay Naruto, I need to know exactly what did you do over the last 5 days to prepare. I do recall that it was you who asked for the 5-day prep time," said Rias as she tried to keep her cool, but can you blame her? Her fate is about to be decided in the next couple of hours. Seeing the frazzled girl, Naruto just let out a throaty chuckle and gave a little shake of the head. "Oh Rias, what makes you think that I did any real prep for the rating game at all?" asked Naruto. This got a howl of rage from Rias as she stomped over towards Naruto to throttle him. "What do you mean? You were the one who asked for the 5-day prep period," screamed Rias, as she grabbed Naruto by his collar and shook him like a rag doll. After finally extracting himself from Rias, he gave her what could be described as a haughty look of derision. "Rias, do you really have so little faith in me? I think my peerage and I, spent about 2 or 3 hours and put together a good battle plan and a couple of contingencies. The 5 days was for Riser, so when I stomp his ass into the ground, there will be no excuses for him to hide behind," said Naruto. If it was the most obvious thing in the world. Rias, while confident in Naruto's abilities, was starting to get a little pissed at his flippant behavior. Rias could see that Akano and Kaneko were starting to wear a little thin in the Naruto department as well. Seeing that another tantrum was in the near future, Mirajane ran over and started to play peacekeeper. "Rias, while I know that this is hard for you, you need to trust us. I can tell you with the utmost certainty that Riser Phoenix does not have a snowball's chance in hell at winning this rating game. It is not me or Naruto being why, it is the simple fact that our group far outclasses anything that Riser has," said Mira in that soothing, almost hypnotic voice that she has. "I know Mira, but if it was me in his place I would still be thinking of different battle strategies. I mean, Naruto is my age. I guess it's still hard to take in how powerful his peerage is for his age," stated Rias, and she looked over at his group. It looks like just said something raunchy or scandalous because both Diana and Akasha were blushing up a storm and sputtering denials to whatever was said. Laxus, Master Hades, and Aizen were in a deep discussion about who knows what, and Kara seemed to be annoying Anne, who was trying to catch her in a web but was failing at it. "I guess it just bugs me that I'm so nervous right now and none of you seem to be the least bit serious, I guess." Rias was really worried right now. It was hard knowing that the fate of the rest of your life was to be decided in a few hours. "Hey, I will let you in on a little secret. Everyone is nervous, and despite the power that we all have pre-battle jitters. Even with all our power, there are no absolutes in battle. That is why Naruto is going into this battle confident but not overly so. Riser may have just beaten himself with the fact that he is underestimating us," replied Mira. She took Ria's hand into her own and gave it a comforting squeeze. "Hey, not to get off topic, but what is your magic? From what I can see, everyone in this peerage has something special about them. I know that Naruto is not shallow enough to pick you just for your looks, so what is it?" questioned Rias. Mia could see a childlike curiosity in her eyes that almost made her cave in. Shaking her head, Mira stood up and made her way back over to her peerage mates, but not before giving her a taunting smirk. Rias gave a pout, knowing that she would have to wait and find out just like everyone else. As things were starting to calm down, a magic circle appeared in the room and Graphia stepped out. "Naruto, it is time for the rating game. Get ready, the announcement for teleportation will be made shortly. Rias, I am here to take you and your peerage up to the observation deck. Searzex will be watching the games and along with Lord and Lady Gremory, Phoenix and Uzumaki. Naruto, I believe Menma will be watching as well," said Graphia as Rias and company made their way over the stand next to her. All this got her was a barely acknowledged grunt. Rias gave Naruto one last smile and mouthed, "Good luck," and they were gone in a flash of red light. Turning to his peerage, it was time to make a rousing speech that would inspire his troops and spur them on to victory. "Riser is a D-bag and cannot be allowed to win. I don't want this to be a rating game. I want this to be a slaughter. Now before you all start pissing and moaning, not all of you will have parts in the game." This drew a loud moan and some boos from his peerage before he could stop it. "As I was saying, not all you will have large roles in this rating game. However, I do believe there is a summit for the young devils coming up, and my idiotic brother as well, so you will get your time," said Naruto. This seemed to somewhat placate his peerage. That said, I want this to be a slaughter. I don't care how you take down your opponents. Toy with them, destroy them outright, I don't care, just don't lose. This is the plan. Kara and Diana will be flying overhead at the start of the game. I want detailed locations of all his pieces. Once I get locations and numbers, I will divide you guys up and send you on your merry way. As Naruto finished his explanation, a massive magic circle appeared underneath them and they were teleported right back into what looked like the occult research club room. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Graphia, will be running commentary and refereeing this rating game that will take place in a replica of Kuo Academy. First we have Riser Phoenix, whose territory is in the student council club room. Then we have Naruto Uzumaki, whose territory is in the old school building. For pawns to promote, you will need to be inside the designated rooms. Explained Graphia. This got a nod from Naruto as he started to look over an aerial map of the school. This match will begin in 3.2.1, begin. With that, the rating game was underway. Kara and Diana shot out of the club room window and were already in the air looking for Riser's pieces. Naruto faintly heard the sound of a sonic boom as Kara and Diana broke the sound barrier and went supersonic. Okay, first as a precaution, Laxus, Hades go into the forest and lay down some precautionary traps just in case some of Riser's pawns manage to get by. I doubt they will, but better to have them and not need them, than to need them and not have them, said Naruto, getting nods from both of them as they set out to do their jobs. As this was getting set up, Naruto began marking places on his map of where the traps were set as Laxus and Hades told him. After their return, it became a waiting game. Naruto, you there? This is Kara? Yeah, Kara, I can hear you. What have you and Diana found? Naruto asked. This drew the attention of his other pieces. Okay, so you have 3 pawns moving towards the schoolhouse through the forest, a rook and 3 pawns moving to take the gym. Both of the knights, 2 pawns and a bishop are on the athletic field. The queen seems to be circling and moving from each location, she has no designated spot. The last rook and bishop are moving in a pincer movement tandem with the 3 pawns and are near the athletic shed and the opposite side of the forest by the pool, said Kara, and she and Diana made their way back to the base. Naruto thanked them and waited for his 2 pawns to make it back. In the meantime, Naruto relayed the information he just got from them to his other pieces and gave them their earpieces. Once that was finished, Kara and Diana made their way back to the clubroom and they got ready for their assignments. Okay, this is what we are going to do, Akasha and Anne. You two are going to intercept the 3 pawns in the forest. Then when you are done, make your way to the athletic field. Next, Darkseid and Mirajane are going to go and take the gem back from the rook and 3 pawns. Laxus, Master Hades, Revan and Aizen, you 4 will go and take the athletic field. When you are done, wait for everyone else to meet you there. Diana and Kara, you guys will take the last rook and bishop by the pool shed. Madara, you will take their queen, make sure she does not interfere. I do not know her power, so don't give her a chance to attack any of us. Lastly, you Doomsday, you will be with me when we storm the castle and take down Riser. Jean, Valley, and May, you 3 will guard the base just in case any of us fail. When all the pawns are gone, you may join us in the final siege of Riser's castle. Alright, you have your assignments, now go and bring me victory. Remember, this is our debut, so let's show them the power of Naruto Uzumaki. With that, all of Naruto's pieces left to complete their assignments. In the forest, Akasha and Anne in her venom form were standing in a clearing that was in the direct path of the pawns. Both had smirks on their face at the prospect of humiliating their opponents for the insult to their master. Well, Akasha had a smirk. Anne just had that crazed grin that came with the venom appearance. Moments later, the 3 pawns landed in the clearing. Well, look at this burnt. It would seem that Uzumaki-sama only sent 2 pawns to deal with us, said Marion, drawing a smirk from her fellow pawn. Yes, it would seem so. We have the number advantage, so we need to make quick work of them so we can promote, said Burnt as Sharia began to make her move. Well, seeing as you don't have any manners despite being maids, I shall start the introductions. I am Akasha Blooddriver, previous vampire ruler, and this is Anne Wayne, holder of the Venom symbiote, said Akasha as she gave them a mock bow. This only seemed to piss them off more and they got ready to attack. Before Sharia could make a move, Anne shot a line of web at her and hit her in the mouth. With a vicious yank, Anne sent her flying right at her, and when she got close, Anne close-lined her right into the ground. As she tried to stand up, Anne jumped and gave another vicious yank on the line and sent Sharia sailing into the air. Still stunned from the previous attack, Sharia had no time to prepare for the coming onslaught. At the peak of the toss, Anne pulled her opponent back towards the earth. As she neared, Anne delivered a devastating uppercut to Sharia's ribs. With a sickening crack, Sharia was sent barreling into the nearest tree. As her body started to slow down, Anne appeared above her and grabbed onto her face. With one more sickening grin, Anne slammed her head into the ground, shattering it in every bone in her body, leaving an impressive 10-foot diameter crater. Sharia's only comfort was that she sustained enough damage to retire after that last attack. With Akasha, the other two pawns made to make a move to help their fellow pawn, only to have their path blocked by Akasha and her large leathery bat wings. They looked nothing like devil wings, these were larger and far more impressive. Your fight is with me. Let your little friend over there try and beat Anne. Besides, you have bigger problems with me right now. As she finished, Yoki and demonic energy exploded from her body, causing a shock wave that tore up the ground. The force of the blast sent both Marion and Burant flying back into a couple of trees. Groaning, the two pawns started to pick themselves up when Akasha seemed to teleport to their location on speed alone and delivered a massive punch right into Marion's face. The force of the impact caused her to retire immediately. Burant, seeing her friend so brutally attacked, went after Akasha in a blind rage. Hoping to get lucky with a Hail Mary punch, Burant swung wildly at Akasha, only for her to bat the attack aside and backhand her into the ground. The attack seemed harmless, but for Burant it felt like getting hit with a sledgehammer. As she kept trying to stand up, only to be slapped back into the ground, after a few minutes of this, Akasha grew tired of this and prepared to end it. "Remember this pain when you think of trying to defy my king again," said Akasha. Then she used her near-perfect control over her power to create a blade of pure demonic energy around her arm. That look of condescension and disgust was all Burant saw before she plunged the blade into her abdomen. Purposefully putting it there that it wouldn't kill her instantly, but was brutal enough for her to retire and to send a message. All who oppose them will be destroyed and left in the dust. Rias Phoenix has lost 3 pawns. Akasha smirked and looked over at Anne, only to see a trail of destruction from the massively one-sided fight that just happened. With a silent signal, the two of them made their way over towards the athletic field. Gymnasium. Darkseid and Mira Jane stopped as they reached the doors to the gym. Mira was about to pull the doors open when Darkseid stopped her. "Allow me, the doors might be booby-trapped," and with that, Darkseid pulled the doors open, only for them to erupt in a fiery explosion. When the flames dies down, Mira could see Darkseid standing there without a scratch on him. "Good call. That would have certainly been an inconvenience in this form," said Mira as they made their way into the gym. The two pieces only took 2 steps into the dark room before the lights flickered on and they saw their opponents. Darkseid looked over the opponents and decided that he would take the rook while Mira Jane handled the 3 pawns. "Mira Jane, I'll take the rook, you handle the rest." Mira gave him a nod and started to walk over to her opponents. "I am Schwalen, rook of Rias Phoenix. Who am I doing battle with?" she asked as Darkseid made his way over towards her. "I am Entropy, I am Death. I am Darkseid. I serve as rook for my king as well." Seeing that as her sign, Schwalen leapt at Darkseid and tried to deliver a roundhouse kick to head, only for Darkseid to causally bat her attack aside without even taking a step. "Hi, I'm Mira Jane, also known as the She-Devil, pawn of Naruto-sama. Who am I facing in battle today?" asked Mira as she saw the 3 pawns in front of her. Seeing as there was no harm in introducing themselves, the twins said their names were Yi and Nell, and the other said her name was Mira. With introductions out of the way, the twins fired up their chain saws and made a mad dash towards Mira Jane. "My turn, take over magic Satan Soul," and with that, a massive black and blue magic circle appeared above her head as her appearance took on her Satan Soul form. With Mira Jane's new appearance, this gave the other pawns pause as they tried to figure out what the hell just happened. The twins tried to hit her, but Mira Jane seemed to just vanish into thin air. Mira Jane reappeared behind them and just causally dodged the twins' erratic swings as they tried to hit her. "Come on, just hold still. Yeah, we just want to cut you up a little," were the twins' replies to Mira Jane's constant dodging. Seeing as they wanted her to stop dodging, Mira Jane spun around and grabbed 2 chainsaw blades and threw them to the sides. They were momentarily stunned but were brought out of it by Mirajane spin kicking both of over towards Mira. Mira leapt at Mirajane and tried to jab her in the head with her staff, only for her to get it broken again. Mira leapt away just as Mirajane fired a spell at her. Let's see how you handle this, darkness stream. A magic circle appeared underneath them and long black tendrils of magical claws shot out at them. Yi and Nell barely had time to dodge and get their chainsaws back. Mira was not so lucky and took the brunt of the attack. Seriously, what is up with this chick? Yeah, her king must be a real D-bag if he has these kinds of people on his peerage, said the twins, not noticing the tick marks that were appearing on Mirajane's forehead as they insulted her king. D-bags, huh? Well, I can show you just how much of a D-bag I really am them. Prepare yourself, and with that she brought her hands up and a purple and black ball of energy formed and started to crackle in energy. Darkness magic soul extinctor. And with a thrust of her hands a massive purple and black beam of energy fired off and engulfed the three pawns. The resulting explosion took out the back half of the gym. Riser Phoenix has lost 3 pawns. Mirajane smirked to herself for a job well done and kept up her Satan soul and waited for Darkseid to finish. Xuelin was not having a good day, her opponent was a monster. For the most part he was able to bat aside all of her attacks like they were from a common housefly. The most infuriating part was if her attack did hit, they did diddly squat. Finally deciding to stop playing around, Xuelin made her fists and feet erupt in fire as she prepared to attack. Sensing that now was a good time to fight back, Darkseid just smirked and started to walk forwards her. Foolish girl, by now you should realize that this battle is hopeless. You do not possess the necessary power to defeat me. Xuelin just gritted her teeth and charged in, trying to hit his knees or one of the common weak spots. Seeing what she was doing, Darkseid with surprising speed spun and grabs her outstretched arm. Then with an unparalleled strength flung her into a wall, just as she was beginning to slide to the ground was slammed back into the wall by a pair of twin red laser beams. Xuelin began to howl in pain as Darkseid's omega beams began to burn away her cloths and began to get burns all over her body. You should have listened to me. Right now if I keep this up my omega beams will reduce you to ashes, said Darkseid, only to cut them off to see if there was any fight left in the young woman. Coughing, Xuelin stood up on shaky legs as intense pain racked her body. Due to her being in the Phoenix House, fire has never been effective against her or her fellow peerage mates. Whatever it was that this thing just did burned her, which should have been impossible. Xuelin, sensing a lull in his fighting, tried to capitalize on this momentary ceasefire. Jumping into the air, Xuelin tried to aim for his eyes, seeing as that is where that accursed power came from. Only for Darkseid to causally slap her into the ground. However, his unknown strength was revealed when her body created a 20-foot crater. It was only due to her status as a rook that she was even able to keep from retiring. Give up, foolish girl, in the state you're in right now you have no chance of defeating me in battle, said Darkseid, when Xuelin spit in this face. As a response a dark look overcame him. So be it. Darkseid held her outstretched in his hand and delivered a vicious uppercut to her midsection. The force of the punch created a small shockwave outwards. Xuelin felt excruciating pain as her body slammed through the ceiling. As her body started to slow in accent, his omega beams slammed into her once more, and this time it was enough to force her to retire. Riser Phoenix has lost 1 rook. Darkseid for his part just looked up with an impartial glance, then looked over at Mirajane to see if she was ready to head over to the athletic field. Seeing as she was already done with her fight, they took flight and made their way to meet up with the others. With Naruto, we find Naruto sitting behind a desk, with his head resting on his hands. After getting the announcement of Riser losing 6 of his 8 pawns and 1 of his rooks, he couldn't help but be a little giddy. Everything was going according to plan. All that was left were 2 more pawns, then he could begin phase 2 of his super ingenious, master domination plan. Ha 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 ha, victory is within my grasp. Soon Riser will fall, and with his defeat I shall usher in a new era of domination. Nothing can stop me, Naruto thought, as he couldn't help but giggle manically. As this was going on, May, Valley, Jean and Doomsday all walked back into the room to see their leader grinning like a madman and giggling like one. However, that was not the most concerning thing. No, the fact that there was a covering the floor. Naruto, what is going on in here? We come back from scouting the perimeter and we find you laughing like a loon and the base is a mess?" asked Mei as she bent down to get a closer look at what covered a lot of the floor. Naruto suddenly looked nervous, and his eyes began to shift back and forth. "I have absolutely no idea what you are talking about," replied Naruto with an uneasy look about him. "Naruto, why is the floor red and sticky?" asked Mei as she swiped a little bit onto her fingers. "Well, I guess you could say it is red and sticky," said Naruto as his attention was shifted to the floor. The three females immediately turned their slight ire towards Naruto. Doomsday just didn't care. "Naruto, what are we standing in?" asked Jean, looking a little uncomfortable that she was standing in an unknown substance. "Would you believe it is a strawberry milkshake?" asked Naruto, only to get a dead pan from the three of them. "Melted gumdrops, more silence, boat nectar," said Naruto, hoping they would believe that. "No, Naruto," the three said in unison, trying hard not to face palm. "Some of God's tears," said Naruto as he winced a little bit at saying the holy name. "The truth, Naruto," said Mei as she was getting annoyed at his dodging the answer. "Fine, I spilled my new chili ramen on the floor when Graphia announced the first set of losses for Riser. It was so sudden that it made me just and spill it all over the floor," said Naruto as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "Naruto, we agreed on your weekly ramen consumption. You blew through that on the first day, you cannot have any more this week. And to make things worse, you spilled it all over the floor and obviously didn't bother to clean it up." A slightly miffed Mei reprimanded, as she used her magic to make the ramen go away. "That is not what matters right now. Riser is down to 2 pawns left. After my 2 bishops and knights take the athletic field, we will have a clear shot at Riser. By then Madara will have taken down her target, and so will have Kara and Diana. Soon Riser himself will fall, and if he is anything like I imagine he will be, it hilarious to watch Doomsday completely destroy him," said Naruto, getting nods of agreement from the rest of the group. Doomsday looking especially pleased at getting to smash the puny little firebird into the ground. Awe and fear was a reoccurring emotion that was being felt by just about everybody in the spectators' box. Everyone in there could not begin to piece together how Naruto put together such a powerful peerage. Graphia felt that her suspicions on his pieces were true, and they were indeed very powerful. Searsex and his parents were proud at how strong Naruto his peerage was. Searsex was also toying with the idea that he could someday succeed him as Devil King. Kushina and Minato were flabbergasted at the power of their estranged son. Kushina was also having brief regrets that she was not a part of his success as a devil. Minato just looked a little pissed for whatever reason. Nobody could ever really figure him out. Rias and her peerage were very shocked. Naruto was her age, and yet his peerage seemed to completely outclass anything Riser had to throw at him. His pieces were on an entirely different level than what Riser was. Menma was mix of being pissed at his brother for having a power that he thought rightfully should be his. He was also arrogant enough to think that when this was all over that he would be trading pieces with Naruto. No one had anything to say. The match that was still unfolding before them was rendering them speechless. They were too engrossed at what was going on to converse with each other about what was happening to the eldest son of the house of Uzumaki. Back in the raiding game arena, Yubaluna was not having a good day. First, it would seem that Naruto's pieces were far more powerful than either Riser or she could have predicted. So far by her count they had lost 6 of their pawns and 1 of their rooks, with Naruto still not taking any casualties. That would have to change. Yubaluna looked down and saw the pale-haired girl and that large oaf of a rook exit the gym. Smirking to herself, Yubaluna prepared to blow them to Kingdom Come, until her devil instincts tingled and told her there was an extreme threat approaching. Turning, Yubaluna had just enough time to dodge what looked like a 6-foot-wide meteorite hurtling straight for her. Seeing the hunk of space rock smash into the ground with a thundering explosion of rock and earth, she turned to see Naruto's queen approaching. "Trying to take out 2 of my king's pieces when they had their backs turned is unacceptable," said the regal voice of Madara. Her one visible eye seemed to have changed from the weird red and black pattern, Madara's canon M's, to a purple ripple pattern. "If you wish to fight that badly, I will indulge you," said Madara as her demonic power and chakra, yes, I'm still using it, began to swirl around her. A battle between queens. I don't know who you are or how strong you think you are. You lost your chance at beating me when your sneak attack missed. while my back was turned by the way," said Eubeluna, trying to catch Madara off guard, and moved into a more favorable position. "I thought that I would repay your attempt with one of my own. Besides, just because I find them distasteful does not mean I won't win using any advantage possible. However, you will not win. I am about to use magic the likes of which you have never seen before, and you will have no idea how to handle," said Madara as her eyes seemed to morph back into their red and black state. Eubeluna wanted to end this fast so she could get back to her king's other pieces. Casting her magic quickly, the area around Madara erupted in a fiery inferno as her explosion magic decimated the immediate vicinity. She started to celebrate, but was halted when she did not hear the voice of Graphia calling out for the opposing queen's retirement. The smoke began to drift away from the crater, and what was left shocked her. There Madara stood without a scratch on her, and she was surrounded by this weird flaming blue rib cage. "If that is the best you can do, then you have no hope of defeating me, girl," said Madara as she leapt out of the crater. "Now it's my turn, universal pull." Eubeluna found herself flying towards Madara and had no way of stopping. As she was closing in, the blue rib cage grew an arm, grabbing and then smashing her into the ground. Eubeluna, thinking herself lucky that she had the durability of a rook, as she picked herself up of the ground, she saw that weird rib cage disappear. Madara just stood there and raised her arm up and pointed her palm at her. Eubeluna heard her whisper, "Almighty push," and what came next hurt beyond belief. An invisible force that felt like freight train slammed into her and sent her rocketing back. Any trees that may have been in her way didn't begin to stop her body. Madara looked casually at the destruction. This fight was too easy. She even held back, and path of torn up trees and earth was easily half a mile long or more. Madara then used her speed and flashed over towards Eubeluna's downed form. Madara arrived in time to see her stand up and drink a bottle of phoenix tears. Eubeluna turned quickly, seeing Madara approach, and set off another explosion underneath her. However, the flames seemed to morph around her, and the energy of the attack seemed to be absorbed into the palm of Madara's hand. "Oh, so that's how she wants to play this, huh?" thought Madara. "Well, if she wants to play more, then who is she to not oblige her?" Using just a simple flick of her hands, Madara made two spears of rock shoot out of the ground and pierced through Eubeluna's shoulders. All Eubeluna could do was scream. The angle at which the rock pierced her kept her from being able to pull herself off of it. Madara then made another flick of her hands, and the air seemed to bend around her to her will. The pressured currents seemed to dance around Eubeluna's body. Gashes appeared all over her before one last strong gust slammed into her body and lifted her off the stone spikes. Eubeluna's conscious state was rapidly fading. With her vision starting to fade out, Eubeluna saw Madara motion one last time towards her body. The only warning she got of the incoming attack was the bright blue light of the lightning bolt as it streaked towards her body. She felt her body seize up, and then oblivion. Riser has lost one queen. Smirking to herself, Madara made her way towards the athletic field. Hopefully by the time she got there, all the other would be finished with their jobs and they could finally put that overrated flaming bird in its place. Kara and Diana were approaching the pool storage shed. Kara used her X-ray vision to look ahead and saw that the bishop and rook were already there. "Hey, the rook and bishops are already at the shed. Who do you want?" asked Kara as they arrived just outside of the room. "You take the rook, and I'll take the bishop since you're weaker to magic than I am," said Diana. As they reached the back of the shed, Diana had to immediately draw her shield and reflect in magical blast of demonic energy. "What the heck, that shield just reflected my attack," stated a clearly shocked Mahai. Isabella stepped forward and made to attack Diana, only to be forced away by an axe kick aimed at her head. "Your fight is with me right now, and by the looks of it your partner isn't going to do so well against Diana's special shield," said Kara as she walked through the dust of her attack. "Now let's see which of us is stronger, a simple pawn of Lord Naruto, or a rook of the Great Riser," was the sarcastic reply of Kara, as she readied her attack against the opposing rook. Very well pawn, I shall indulge you, but I must make this fast so I can take down the other one as well," said Isabella. Before she could even blink, Kara was upon her and right in her face. Kara led with a cliché, and opened with a Superman pun totally intended. Isabella barely had time to bring up her hands in defense, only to get knocked through both walls of the shed and out the back. Isabella eventually came to a stop and attempted to regain her balance. only to get two fists slammed into her abdomen at supersonic speeds. Kara, seeing where she was going to land, launched herself at Isabella and hit her the second she was on her feet again. Kara took off after Isabella again in a burst of speed, the force shattering the ground beneath her. Kara flew past Isabella's body and stopped in front of her, then put both fists together and hammered Isabella into the ground as her body came in reach. Rias chose poorly when it came to his peerage. He picked beauty of practicality. The only pieces I can sense true potential from are his queen and his sister the bishop. Spat Kara. If this was all Rias could bring to the table, then it was a miracle that they made it this far. Shut up, you know nothing. Rias is the best king there is. Yours is just a pathetic clan reject that was too weak to be accepted by his clan. Shouted Isabella, not knowing that it would have been better if she kept her mouth shut. Kara just gained a dark look on her face. After hearing the crap being spewed about her king, she lost it. Isabella, seeing Kara distracted, threw a roundhouse kick at Kara's head. Kara casually raised her arm up and blocked the kick like it was nothing, forcing her leg away, and then backhanded Isabella into the ground. Isabella attempted to get up, only for Kara to freeze her arms and legs into place. While the ice itself wasn't very strong, it served its purpose of a momentary distraction for Kara. Isabella looked up only to see Kara's eyes began to glow red. Red energy seemed to leak from her eyes, and with a yell Kara unleashed all of the pent-up energy. The twin beams of pure heat slammed into Isabella, instantly reducing her mask and cloths to ashes. Third-degree burns began to form all over her body, and luckily she was retired before she herself was reduced to ash. Rias has lost one rook. Kara smirked to herself for a job well done, and made her way back to Diana when Grafia made another announcement. Rias has lost one bishop. Back with Diana and Mahai. What is that shield? I have never seen anything like it before, questioned Mahai, as she readied another attack. Diana only smirked as she lazily made her way over towards her foe. This is the infamous Aegis, the shield of old that was wielded by the gods themselves. This is the exact shield that was wielded by Athena herself, said Diana. The head of a Gorgon could be seen in the middle of the shield. This only caused Mahai to step back. A magical artifact of that caliber could have any number of unknown abilities. However, that is not my most prized possession. This was the hardest to get as it was still in possession of its original owner when I took it from him, said Diana as she seemed to reach into a dimensional pocket, and as she pulled her hand out, a wave of demonic power pulsed out over the area. I would normally keep this a secret as a trump card, but my king said to humiliate my opponents and show our true power. So I give you, the devil's most prized and powerful sword, the Gram sword. There in all of its demonic glory was the Gram. Just being near it felt like being close to a reverse Excalibur sword. Diana pulled her arm back and took a swing at the bishop. A wave of dark demonic energy flew at her. The arc of energy slammed into Mahai, still too stunned and fearful of the pawn to make any sort of move to dodge her. The attack was powerful enough to end the fight immediately and forced her to retire before any more damage could be done. Rias has lost one rook. Pity, I was hoping she would have lasted longer than that. If that is the extent of Rias' peerage, then this will be too easy, thought Diana as she looked towards where Kara went after. Rias has lost one bishop. It would seem that it was time for them to make their way over to the athletic field. This raiding game was coming to a close. Laxus, Master Hades, Revan and Aizen arrived at the athletic field. There in front of them stood the final pieces of Rias' peerage they needed to defeat before the final phase of the game could commence. I am Carlamine, Knight of Rias, and I challenge the Knight of Uzumaki to a duel. Revan stepped towards her and introduced himself. I am Darth Revan, Knight and servant to the King Naruto. You may want to rethink your strategy on facing me alone. You may not live to see the end of our encounter. And with a flourish of his wrists, two cylindrical objects flew into his hands. This alone drew confused looks from the Phoenix pieces. Then with a buzzing sound, two blades of light, one purple and one red, emerged from the ends of the tubes. Seeing as he was getting ready to attack, Carlamine drew her sword and set it ablaze. Revan came in fast. Even for a knight it was at blinding speeds. Carlamine's devil instincts were all that were keeping her alive at this point. Revan danced around her sword strikes. An observer could tell that he was just playing with his target. Carlamine made to lop his head off. Revan just ducked under the strike and spun behind her, drawing 2 cuts to the backs of her calves. Carlamine cried out in pain, as the cuts forced her to her knees. Revan just stood back and waited to see if she would get up. Carlamine forced herself to stand, even though her legs felt like they were on fire. She righted her sword and took another swing at Revan, only for him to dodge again and make 2 more shallow cuts on both of her triceps. Revan soon began to grow bored, seeing as this was probably the best he was going to get out of her. Carlamine herself was in a lot of pain, even though the cuts weren't that deep, they were precise and had meaning. They were meant to hinder her movements and make it harder to function in battle. This set the tone for the rest of the battle. Carlamine would try her best to fight through the pain and would attempt to hit Revan with one of her strikes. Revan would dance around her blade, and strike out with precise cuts all over her body meant to slowly disable her ability to move freely. Carlamine was getting desperate. She held her sword out in front of her and lit the blade ablaze with phoenix fire. Carlamine took a few more swipes at Revan, trying desperately to hit him only for his swords to cut hers off at the hilt. His sabers cut through her sword like it wasn't even there. "What the hell kind of weapon is that?" questioned Carlamine in fascination and outrage. Her sword didn't even offer any resistance when it finally came into contact with the glowing sabers. Revan didn't seem to want to deem her question with an answer and made a gesture with his hand. Carlamine immediately started to grasp at her throat. Slowly her body was lifted off the ground. Revan made a trusting motion with his hand and Carlamine was sent flying into the trees, only for Revan to bring her flying back towards him. "You finally seem to grasp the gravity of your situation. You didn't have a chance in hell at defeating me." Then purple-blue lightning shot out of his hands and started to electrify her. After holding the attack for 20 seconds or so, Revan let up and let her retire. Riser has lost one knight. Aizen looked across the field and saw his opponent was the other knight. Neither seemed to want to talk, and both of them seemed to want to get this over as quickly as possible. As if by some unseen signal, both knights blurred out of sight and met in the middle in a clash of steel. Cyrus had her massive sword, and Aizen had his Zanpakuto. Aizen however leapt back and seemed to drop his guard. This would seem like a foolish move, for Cyrus was on him in a second, putting him on the defensive. It would seem that her massive sword was too much for Aizen to handle because every strike seemed to chip away at his defense. Cyrus couldn't understand. No matter how many times she seemed to hit this Aizen guy, he never went down. She would slash at his chest and he would be sent flying only to get back up again. Cyrus had thought that the fight would be a little more even if Revan was anything to go by. With one last vicious strike that Aizen seemed to barely have enough time to block, sent him crashing into the earth. "Well, it would seem that it is now time for me to end this fight. I had hoped you would have put up better resistance, but it was not to be," stated Cyrus, as she then dashed forwards and made to slice his head off, but her sword seemed to pass right through him. Aizen then stood up with a smirk plastered on his face. He then seemed to shimmer and then fade out of existence. "What the hell, Cyrus? Your opponent is that Aizen guy over there. Why the hell were you attacking me?" yelled Revel, as for the past few minutes she spent them dodging all of Cyrus' attacks. "What? But how is that possible? I saw Aizen and I know that I was fighting him, not Revel." Though Cyrus, her look of shock and horror on her face as she looked from Revel over to Aizen, who seemed to have not moved since his arrival. "What's the matter, Knight of Riser? You seem a little confused. Can't figure out why you attacked Revel instead of me. It's very simple really. While I am the fastest member of my king's peerage and one of his best swordsmen, I have another ability. It is called the Kyoka Suigetsu. I know it's the name of the sword, but I'm using it as the ability name. It grants me the ability of complete hypnosis. I won't tell you how it is activated, but know that his ability allows me to control an individual or a group's 5 senses completely. I can make them see, feel, hear anything I want them to," was all Aizen said before he seemed to disappear from where he was standing on to put Cyrus on the defensive. Unlike Darth Revan, who only made a few precise cuts on his opponent's body, Aizen seemed to phase in and out of existence and seemed to just flicker around her. Aizen was moving so fast that you could only see the after images of him. Cyrus had not way to defend herself as cuts seemed to appear all over her body. Aizen seemed to be finished toying with his prey and finished her off with 2 vicious slashes to her back, before the pain and fatigue caught up with her mind and body and she retired out of the game. Riser has lost one knight. Ni and Lee were pretty nervous at this point. At the beginning of the fights they had the other team outnumbered, however the last two humiliating losses seemed to tilt that in the opponent's favor pretty quickly. It would seem that it is now my turn. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Precht Gaybalg, also known as Master Hades. I am a bishop in the peerage of my king Naruto. For your master's transgression against his house I shall have to put you in your place. Precht said as he made his cape disappear. Ni and Lee seemed to take offense to his statement at putting them in their place. They turned to each other and with some silent communication they both simultaneously dashed towards him, their intent on overwhelming him before he could cast any spells. Precht seemed to have seen this coming and formed a finger gun. Then a dense purple magic energy formed on the tips of his fingers, and then with a drop of his thumb the magic energy seemed to fire off in compressed bolts towards the twins. Ni and Lee immediately had to rethink their strategy. They couldn't even seem to get close to this old guy. Thus far they have been able to dodge all of his magical attacks, but that seemed to do them little good and the bishops didn't even look tired. Well, you have lasted longer than I anticipated, but that is all about to change, said Precht, and with a thrust of his hand a purple magic circle appeared in front of him. Seconds later a chain made of magic shot out of the circle towards the twins. Using their cat-like reflexes they were able to jump out of the way, avoiding getting pierced by the wicked-looking chain heads. This went on for several minutes, but it seemed that the twins were starting to get worn down. Precht seemed to have unbelievable control over his chains, making them act like extra appendages. As the twins started to slow down, this was what Precht seemed to be waiting for. Well, as much fun as this fight has been, it is time to end this, said Master Hades. With two fingers pointed out on one of his hands he started to make a bunch of weird gestures in the air. Then 3 circles of magic appeared in front of him, each circle a little smaller than the last. Amaterasu. Formula 28. An explosion of purple energy erupted from the 3 circles and caused a pillar of purple energy to rocket skyward. See wiki for a pic if you don't know what it looks like. Riser Phoenix has lost 2 pawns. You're lucky I toned down the spell and used one of the weaker formulas, or you would have been dead, was all Precht said as he made his way over to the group. All that was left was to take out the remaining bishop and then they could take the king. Revell had no words for what she just witnessed. Naruto's pieces had just taken out 4 of Riser's and they didn't even seem tired. All that was remaining was her and her king Riser. Revell was taken out of her thoughts when she saw Laxus approaching her. For the first time in her life she felt real fear. Revell, my name is Laxus Drayar and I am a bishop of Naruto Uzumaki. I know that you have a special relationship with him, that is why I am asking you to surrender and retire from the game now before I am forced to fight you. Please comply. Naruto has told me what you guys have been through and that you were his friend. I don't want to hurt you, but if you choose to fight I will have no choice, said Laxus as he now stood in front of Revell. The fear she was feeling started to go away now that she knew she was a choice to surrender rather than fight. Hello Laxus, it is nice to meet you. After what I have seen Naruto's peerage do and have heard what you did to my brother, I have no intention of ever picking a fight with you. I will comply and surrender. I hope we can be friends after the game is over. With that, Grafia took her surrender and retired Revell from the game. Riser has lost 1 bishop. With that out of the way we just need to wait for our king to arrive and we can get this raiding game over with, said Laxus to the other 3 pieces, seeing the rest of their fellow peerage members arriving at the athletic field with them. Riser was beyond furious. It would seem that his peerage was filled with a bunch of no-good weaklings if they lost to Naruto's pathetic peerage. With a cry of rage Riser incinerated the desk he was sitting at. They hadn't even managed to take down a single piece in Naruto's peerage. They were pathetic and would receive punishment later for their failures. Well, you know what they say, if you want something done right you have to do it yourself. With a flourish of his hands Riser made his way out of the office and new school building so he could engage Naruto and company himself. It would seem that his arrogance precedes what even we thought, my king. I can make out his energy signature coming this way to meet us head on, said Madara as she turned to address her newly arrived king. After hearing of the final piece being taken out of the game, Naruto and the rest of his pieces made their way to the athletic field to meet up with the majority of his peerage. Good, it would seem that we won't have to flush him out of his base after all. This will make his defeat all the sweeter. For his final humiliation, Doomsday, you will be the one to finish off the king, said Naruto, gaining his other rook's attention. There are two ways to defeat a phoenix. The first way is to use an attack that is on par with a god or ultimate class being. This would beat his regeneration as there would be nothing to regenerate. While this is a viable option for us, I personally would like to go with the second way. That is to just beat his ass into the ground until we break his spirit. Naruto finished with a downright evil smile on his face. What creeped Madara and company out even more was that Doomsday seemed to share the same smile. Naruto was about to address the rest of his peerage when Jean jumped in front of him and used one of her holy swords to cut a massive fireball in half. "Na-kun, it would seem that Riser has arrived a little ahead of schedule," said Jean as she looked at the offending king with distaste. "Naruto, it would seem that your pieces are somewhat useful after all. They managed to defeat my entire peerage without you losing a single member of yours. However, you are still no match for me, for I have the power of the Foen." Whatever Riser was going to say after that was cut off by Doomsday jumping up to him and smashing his fist into Riser's face and sending him back into the new school building. "How dare you interrupt me, a high-class devil, you low-class piece of TRA." Riser was once again cut off from his rant with a massive fist to the face. "How dare, punch, how, punch, stop enter, punch, stop I saw, punch, I said stop it, punch." Everything Riser attempted to speak, Doomsday would just punch Riser further and further into the wall he is embedded into. Eventually Riser was able to pull himself from the wall and looked at Doomsday with complete unadulterated hatred. "You low-class scum, you will pay for this humiliation. Die," and with that Riser sent the largest fireball he could muster at large Rook. Riser was confident that it wouldn't be able to dodge the attack due to its size, and he was correct. Doomsday was soon engulfed in a fiery inferno. Riser's celebration was short-lived, however, as Doomsday walked out of the flames without a scratch on him. "How are you still standing? You should have at least received some damage from that attack," Riser asked, only for anything after that to be cut off by a devastating uppercut. The punch alone almost instantly shattered every bone in this body, but the large bone spikes on Doomsday's knuckles torn 4 large gashes in his body as well. Riser's body eventually made its descent, only for Doomsday to catch him by his leg. For the next 5 minutes or so Doomsday proceeded to rag-doll Riser and smash his body into everything that he could find. Doomsday made sure that Riser was well acquainted with the ground, the walls, the roof, any and all furniture that was in the room. I say was because you could really classify it as furniture after Doomsday was done with it. Like what the Hulk did to Loki, but much longer and more violent. Slowly Riser was being turned into a bloody mess, with every devastating swing that Doomsday sent Riser's body into something new. As time went on, Riser's body slowly stopped regenerating. The rate of his healing was slowing drastically to the point that he was now bleeding. With one last massive toss, Doomsday sent Riser through the original wall he came in through, and was sent back to the waiting group of devils. Naruto was just beginning to think that he may have to go stop Doomsday, when that same wall exploded again and Riser came sailing back over to the assembled group. Doomsday could be seen a few seconds later bursting up through the roof of the school, and landing back on top of Riser just as he made an attempt to stand up. "Well, it would seem that you and my Rook have had some quality time. Would you like to surrender now, or do you and Doomsday want to have another chat?" asked Naruto, and he squatted down to look Riser in the eye. "Why, you are all monsters," stuttered out Riser as he finally regained his bearing only to see himself surrounded. "No, we aren't monsters, we're just ahead of the curve, that's all," said Naruto as he grabbed Riser by what was left of his collar and hoisted him up into the air. "Now I want you to surrender so that I can win this rating game and put a stop of this farce of an engagement," Naruto finished as he slowly began to leak his magical power. A dark red energy began to swirl around him, growing larger with each passing moment. "That's all you care about, the engagement? What about the devil community? This engagement is important to the survival of our race, and all you can think about is Rias' engagement," shouted Riser as he seemed to finally gain back a little of the bravado he seemed to have lost. "It's just about the engagement, it's about sending a message. What that message is, I think you will figure it out," Naruto replied, and suddenly all of the energy that was surrounding Naruto seemed to converge on a single point on his hands. Then Riser seemed to be thrown back by a massive force that ended up sending him through the remaining school building and out the back. Riser seemed to smash and roll on the ground for the next 100 yards before coming to a stop. Consciousness seemed to have left him the second he was blasted away from Naruto. Riser Phoenix has been defeated. Naruto Uzumaki is the winner of the rating game. Naruto's peerage all gave a loud whoop and began to cheer and congratulate each other on a job well done. Winning their first rating game, Naruto set something in motion in the underworld that would be remembered for years to come. Naruto briefly looked up at the sky of the arena, thinking that he had finally taken his first step in reclaiming his rightful place as heir of the Uzumaki house. His first goal, to restore the house to its former glory, not the shell that it has become under the leadership of Minato. With that final thought running through his head, a massive magical circle appeared underneath Naruto and his peerage before they all disappeared back to the underworld. Rias Peerage was elated. Naruto had kept his promise. He was able to defeat Riser and got her out of that horrible engagement. Rias was also in shock, as was her queen Akeno and the rest of her peerage. Naruto didn't just win, he and his peerage slaughtered Riser and his group. They didn't even stand a chance. Looking back at that day in the club room seemed to bring up a few new insights about Naruto. With a peerage this strong, Naruto had to have known the outcome of the rating game before it even started, given his lax attitude beforehand only seemed to support that idea. The next big question is, how did he get that strong? Moreover, how did he acquire such powerful pieces? Rias was brought out of her train of thought by Akeno and the other people in the room starting to discuss what they just witnessed. Wow, I had no idea that Naruto was that powerful, or that he possessed such powerful pieces. Where do you suppose he found such promising members? Questioned Sirzex as he looked over towards his queen and parents to see if they had any ideas. I have no idea. After little Naru-chan left, I hadn't had any contact with him until he's came back. Even then I haven't really had any time to catch up with him or anything, said Venelana as she gazed back at the screen, which showed Naruto and his peerage celebrating their victory. Well, it doesn't matter anyway because that power belongs to the house of Uzumaki and my brother is just going to trade his good pieces over to me anyways, said Menma, making his presence known for the first time that night. Furthermore, this will be a great opportunity for my parents to pass the engagement from Naruto to myself. If you want to create a super devil, why didn't you come to me in the first place? He questioned, gaining a heated look from Rias and her peerage and the arrogance in his voice. Before anyone could respond, a magic circle appeared in the room and Naruto and his peerage were transported to the observation room since none of his pieces needed any medical attention. Naruto took one look around the room and instantly found Rias, as she launched herself at his and gave Naruto a bone-crushing hug. Oh Naruto, I knew you would do it, you kept your promise. You said that you would get me out of my engagement to Riser and you have, cried Rias, as tears of joy were flowing from her eyes. Akeno was about to go over as well and hug her long-lost friend as well to congratulate him on his victory as well when a voice spoke up. Hello brother. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.